Chapter 310. Marchioness E, what are you laughing at? Wang Chong was perplexed. Could it be that he had just told a funny joke? Furthermore, that gaze was really uncomfortable. Hee hee brat, do you know why so many ladies suddenly appeared? Marchioness E couldn't help but laugh. Those words left Wang Chong surprised. It was a question that struck a chord in Wang Chong's heart. He was still perplexed by the matter. But Marchioness E seemed to know something about it. Marchioness E, you know? Wang Chong's curiosity was piqued. Hee hee, look at your expression, it's too hilarious. Marchioness E clutched her stomach as she laughed even louder. Marchioness E, hurry up and speak. What is going on? Seeing Marchioness E trying to keep him in suspense, Wang Chong stomped his feet anxiously. Hee hee, think about it. Can't you guess it at all? Marchioness Yi's gaze toward Wang Chong grew even more bizarre. How would I know? Wang Chong was filled with hatred. Marchioness Yi's words left him wanting to beat her up. Yet, she was so powerful that he wasn't a match for her. Just as he was gritting his teeth in hatred, a thought suddenly flashed across Wang Chong's mind. Second sister. Is it your second sister's doing? Wang Chong looked at Marchioness Yi. To make Marchioness Yi think that he should know and create such a huge ruckus just to tease him. The only person Wang Chong could think of was his second sister. This time, Marchioness Yi laughed even louder. Clutching her stomach, she couldn't even straighten her back. No matter how slow Wang Chong was, he knew that he had guessed correctly. Second sister. The sudden appearance of so many ladies in the vicinity of the Deflecting Blade Manor was indeed related to second sister. Hee hee, I'm dying of laughter. Do you know what that fellow Zhu Yan said? Initially, Marchioness Yi didn't think much of it. But upon seeing Wang Chong's expression, she suddenly felt that this pair of cousins was really interesting. Your cousin has spread the word that the Wang clan is preparing to take in a wife for you. Anyone who could join the Deflecting Blade Manor would have a chance of becoming the daughter-in-law of the Wang clan. That's why there are so many girls from the 3 great training camps. Before Wang Chong could ask, Marchioness Yi had already solved the mystery. What? Hearing this, Wang Chong turned pale with fright. He wondered why so many girls would appear here, and why they were shouting such strange slogans, which had nothing to do with spiritual veins. He didn't expect it to be for such a reason. Second sister, are you joking? Wang Chong panicked. Was this something that could be joked about? Although he knew it was a joke. However, the outsiders wouldn't think so. They would only treat second sister Wang Zhuyan's words as the truth. Wang Chong knew that second sister wouldn't be idle, but he didn't expect her to find such a huge joke for him. Wang Chong could already imagine the sight of his second sister convulsing with laughter at Longwei training camp. If you want to say anything, you should look for your second sister. I'll go in to look at the name list first. There are a few girls in there, and I really want to add them to the list. I don't want to see all of you brats when I enter the Deflecting Blade Manor in the future. Marchioness Yi chuckled as she left Wang Chong alone and walked into the Deflecting Blade Manor. Black lines streaked across Wang Chong's face. Despite being ridiculed by Marchioness Yi, he was unable to refute her words. Second sister, isn't this fellow messing around? After giving it some thought, Wang Chong realized that this matter couldn't be ignored. Thus, he turned around and wrote a stern letter to his second sister before leaving the Deflecting Blade Manor and entering the depths of the mountain. The War of the Princes was no small matter. Up until now, the first prince had appeared. The second prince had also appeared. And adding on the prince who had used a divination master to calculate his spiritual vein, there were already 3 princes of considerable importance appearing. Heavens! Wang Chong knew that there would be another wave of princes demanding the spirit vein from him. In fact, they might even make use of this opportunity to pull the Wang clan into his faction. At such a dangerous moment, Wang Chong needed to calm down and think about what he should do next. He didn't dare to stay in the training camp or the Deflecting Blade Manor any longer. The depths of the mountain was the best place for him to contemplate. Executing phantom shadow steps, Wang Chong soon vanished from sight. The deep mountains were filled with thorns that shrouded the sky. Other than birds and beasts, few people would venture here. At this moment, there were 2 figures strolling about. The young man seemed to be around 18 or 19 years old. He had a slender figure and a jade-like complexion. He was extremely handsome, and he exuded an innate air of nobility and grace. His every movement exuded an aura of elegance and authority. However, his face was extremely pale, and it seemed like he wasn't in good health. Walking beside the young man was a thin servant in his 40s. He was dressed in a grayish-brown robe, and had a wretched expression on his face. His appearance was even more hideous. However, what attracted one's attention was his neck. Despite being a man, he didn't have an Adam's apple. Although the servant was supposed to be a level lower than the others, in reality, the servant was extremely impatient. "Uncle Jing, I've already hidden all the way here. Will big brother and second brother let me off? Imperial father should have forgotten about me, right?" The handsome young man walked alone under the canopy of a tree, supported by the servant. This place was overgrown with thorns and shrubs, so there shouldn't have been a path. However, the young man had been walking here for a few months, and had forcefully stepped out of the shrubs to create a small path. Sunlight shone through the gaps in the trees, and fell on the young man's body. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, as he felt the warmth of the sunlight on his body. It seemed like he was enjoying the feeling of being forgotten. "Your Highness, are you muddle-headed?" The servant was already impatient. When he heard this, he became even more irritated. His words became even more impolite. "As a member of the royal family, and a descendant of the Holy Emperor, you should be closer to your father, so that you can receive the favor of the Holy Emperor and ascend to the throne. But you not only did you request to come to this useless Kunwa training camp, you're actually afraid that you're not far enough away from your father? You don't seek to improve yourself." The servant couldn't help but reprimand him. If it weren't for the fact that he had no choice as a eunuch in the palace, he wouldn't have followed such a useless master. With this kind of temperament, it was obvious that he was cannon fodder in the whirlpool of power. When the new emperor ascended to the throne, only death would await him. It didn't matter if he died, but when the time came, he would also die if he implicated him. Since ancient times, the people around the princes who failed to fight for the throne would all die. "Haha, Uncle Jing, you know that I don't like to fight with my elder brothers. Moreover, I'm no match for them. Isn't it better to be forgotten by my father? That's exactly what I want. Moreover, it's very quiet here. I like it here." When he heard the servant's words, the young man laughed and didn't care at all. "Enough. You want to die, but I don't want to die with you." The extremely ugly servant used all his strength to shake off the young man's arm, then walked forward in a rage. The more he thought about it, the more annoyed he became. If he didn't get rid of the young man, only death would await him. He would have killed this foolish fifth prince a long time ago. He really didn't care at all. He had served the young man for so many years, but it was all for nothing. "Hee, Uncle Jing, you grew up with me. I know that you're just saying those words out of anger." The young prince had a good temper. Seeing the servant fling his sleeves and leave, he didn't seem angry at all. Instead, he chuckled and chased after the servant. Kinship had never existed in the royal family. Back when the Holy Emperor was still the crown prince, his mother had only been the crown prince's concubine, and she had passed away at a young age. In the depths of the royal palace, it was difficult for one to survive. Most of the people by his side had died. In the end, only this Uncle Jing was left. There weren't many people who could accompany him anymore. For this reason, he valued this relationship of his very much. Looking in the direction that Uncle Jing had disappeared, the young prince hurriedly chased after him. Walala! Pigeons flew past his head, heading toward the deflecting blade manor. Seeing those pigeons hurriedly flying past, for some reason, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. It seemed like his decision to leave the training camp was a wise one. These princes don't know how to fight back, Wang Chong thought. He hadn't panicked even when he was facing Yao Guangyi at the vast crane pavilion. But this time, he really felt that the situation was a little troublesome. Hua! With a leap, Wang Chong shot forward like an arrow amidst the tremors of the tree branches. He somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on another tree branch several zhang away. For some reason, in this isolated place, Wang Chong felt extremely relaxed. His mind was clear, and his mood was much better. "Don't follow me." Suddenly, a furious voice sounded in his ears. In the depths of the mountain, it was exceptionally piercing. Hmm. Wang Chong's sword-like eyebrows twitched in shock. There's someone here? You're such a disappointment. The angry and rude voice came from afar again, as if it was reprimanding someone. Weird. Hearing this voice, Wang Chong suddenly felt a tinge of curiosity. Even though not everyone was confined to the Kunwa training camp, at least 90% of them were restricted from leaving as they pleased. It was entirely due to Zhao Qianqiu that Wang Chong was able to enjoy this convenience. This was also the reason why Wang Chong chose Zhao Qianqiu as his disciple when he first entered the Kunwa training camp. So, Wang Chong leaped from the tree branch to the southwest. A moment later, at a distance of 30 to 40 zhang, separated by layers of leaves, Wang Chong caught sight of a middle-aged servant and a handsome young man standing together, seemingly in an intense argument. At first glance, Wang Chong didn't think much of it, only thinking that he had never seen such a person before in the Kunwa training camp. But on the second glance, Wang Chong's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. Li Heng. Like a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong had never imagined that he would see the fifth prince Li Heng here. In this world, there weren't many people who had seen Li Heng and knew of the fifth prince. But in the other world, there was almost no one who didn't know of the fifth prince. The reason was very simple. Chapter 311. Boom! Looking at the two figures in the distance, Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. The outside world didn't know much about the future son of heaven. Even Wang Chong didn't know that the other party was in the same training camp as him. Furthermore, it was in the most inconspicuous and lowest-ranking camp of the three camps, a training camp for commoners. This was truly surprising. While Wang Chong was still in shock over his unexpected discovery in the mountains, he suddenly heard a crisp slap. Looking over, Wang Chong saw that the gray-robed servant had actually slapped fifth Prince Li Heng. Audacious! A hint of rage flashed across Wang Chong's eyes. Pung! Pushing his speed to the limit, Wang Chong abruptly cut in between the servant and fifth Prince Li Heng. With a single slap, he sent the gray-robed servant flying and helped the fallen future emperor up. Li Jingzhong, you sure have guts! Wang Chong turned around and bellowed furiously at the eunuch. At this point, killing intent had already surfaced in his eyes. Since the fifth prince was here, the middle-aged servant serving him was, without a doubt, the infamous chief eunuch Li Jingzhong of the later generations who toyed with politics. The latter had an even more resounding name, Great Eunuch Li Fugua, the #1 treacherous official during the chaotic era of the Tang dynasty. In the Central Plains after the passing of the Holy Emperor, if there was one person that everyone hated, then it must be Great Eunuch Li Fugua. In his previous life, countless people wanted to assassinate him, drink his blood, and feast on his flesh. If not for this bastard, the resurgence of the Tang dynasty wouldn't have been interrupted. It could be said that he was the one who single-handedly ruined the last hope of the Tang dynasty. Forget it. Just as Wang Chong was considering whether or not he should take this opportunity to kill off Li Jingzhong before he had fully grown into the treacherous hero he would later become, a mellow and gentle voice entered his ears. Prince Li Heng rubbed his purple face, but his expression was exceptionally calm and indifferent. Uncle Jing didn't do it on purpose. It was just an impulsive mistake. On the other side, Li Jingzhong's body was also trembling. His face was pale, and he was quite frightened. He really didn't do it on purpose. Although he had always been bullied by this fifth prince, and the thought of teaching him a lesson had been lingering in his mind, he had never really thought of slapping him. It was not a small crime for a servant to slap his master. He had completely lost his mind from anger. What was even more unexpected was that in such a secluded and uninhabited mountain, he was actually seen by someone. If word of this got out, how could he still have his life? I'm sorry, Your Highness. I was confused. Li Jingzhong's reaction was also fast. He slapped himself heavily in the face a few times. You can say that, Uncle Jing. I know that you didn't do it on purpose. The fifth prince waved his hand, his expression the same as ever. At this sight, Wang Chong fell into deep thought. It wasn't without reason that the fifth prince had been able to become an emperor and receive the attention of the Holy Emperor. Putting aside everything else, just his extraordinary breadth of mind and temperament made it impossible for a normal person to compare to him. The nobles of the imperial family were of noble birth. If it were any other prince who was slapped by a servant, they would have already flown into a rage. But he was able to maintain his usual expression, unperturbed. But at the same time, he didn't seem weak or incompetent. This was not something that every prince could do. "Young master, how should I address you?" Fifth Prince Li Heng looked at Wang Chong said. Compared to Uncle Jing, he was more curious about this youth's background. This youth was clearly younger than him, but he seemed to be very familiar with him. But Li Heng couldn't remember where he had met him before. "That's right. And who are you? Just what are you up to, acting so sneakily?" When Li Jingzhong heard this, he immediately seized the opportunity to counterattack. He had almost been scared to death just now. If the news of him beating up a prince were to be spread by this brat in front of him, he would immediately die. Moreover, Li Jingzhong felt an even deeper sense of unease. Just how did this brat know that he was called Li Jingzhong? Even in the depths of the palace, there shouldn't be many people who knew his name, right? Yet, this unknown lad from Kunwa training camp was actually able to call out his name in an instant. That was truly absurd. If possible, Li Jingzhong wanted to think of a way to kill this brat. "Speak. Did the first prince send you here?" Slap. Before Li Jingzhong could finish speaking, Wang Chong slapped him across the face with such force that his body swayed, and half his face swelled up. Let alone Li Jingzhong, even Prince Li Heng was left dumbfounded by this move. Before beating a dog, one had to look at its master. Since Wang Chong knew his identity, he knew that he shouldn't do anything to him. I hit you in place of the fifth prince. His Highness can ignore it, but I can't not teach you a lesson. When did a eunuch of the palace become so arrogant as to strike a prince? Do you want me to report this to the imperial clan court, or the court of judicial review?" Wang Chong coldly said, his tone extremely domineering. "Let me tell you something. I am called Wang Chong, a descendant of the capital's Wang clan. My grandfather is Wang Juling. My big uncle is an important official of the court, and my father is Wang Yan. If you want to report me, go ahead." These words made Li Jingzhong's face even paler than before. Even Li Heng appeared shocked, as if he was seeing this youth for the first time. The capital's Wang clan, a clan of ministers and generals. Even a prince like him had to look up to Wang Chong's status. But what truly left Li Heng shocked was something else. "You are Wang Chong?" Li Heng assessed Wang Chong from head to toe in astonishment. In the Tang dynasty, this name didn't need any background to set it off, because he himself was already famous. Even a prince deep in the palace knew that an incredible youth called Wang Chong had recently appeared in the capital. The rumors on the streets said that Wang Chong wasn't even 16 yet. Li Heng hadn't believed it at first. But now, Li Heng realized that Wang Chong's true age was even younger than he had imagined. As for Li Jingzhong, he was truly frightened out of his wits. The current him was far from reaching the level where he could blot out the heavens with one hand and reach the highest position. No matter how formidable he was, he had relied on the fifth prince's trust, not his own authority. Right now there were still many things that he was afraid of. At the very least, this descendant of the Wang clan made him extremely fearful. How refreshing! Wang Chong saw all of this, and he felt incomparably exhilarated. To give those common people who hated Li Jingzhong to the bone a tight slap. This feeling was truly refreshing, even more so than advancing to a higher realm in cultivation. The future treacherous minister of the Tang dynasty, Li Fugua, had gathered countless experts by his side. Putting aside giving him a slap, they couldn't even get close to him. Within 300 zhang, even a mosquito would be snuffed out. There were also countless experts from the evil path, demonic path, and sects. Their protection was truly flawless. Of those experts who wanted to assassinate Li Fugua, many of them had died within 300 zhang of Li Fugua. But the current Li Jingzhong wasn't the future Li Fugua, and he didn't have as many experts protecting him. To think that he couldn't even retaliate against Wang Chong was truly satisfying. If I get rid of him now, I'll have one less treacherous minister in the future, Wang Chong said to himself. Li Jingzhong, or rather Li Fugua, was the first eunuch to become prime minister. He was the first eunuch to monopolize power and interfere in the affairs of the court. In the future, the Tang dynasty would fall into ruin, and this person would be the instigator. If he were to kill him now, perhaps he would have one less treacherous minister in the future. The Tang dynasty would also have a chance of survival. But this thought only flashed through Wang Chong's mind for a moment before Wang Chong himself extinguished it. A sword had two edges. If there was a front, there was a back. Although Li Jingzhong was a treacherous minister who brought disaster to the country and the people, he wasn't completely useless. At the very least, he had been of great help to Li Heng in his early days. He was a schemer and crafty person, and in the intense struggle for the throne, he had helped Li Heng time and time again escape the schemes of the other princes. This was also the reason why Li Heng trusted him so much that he didn't even curse him when he was slapped. But this also created the treacherous minister Li Fugua, who would monopolize power in the future. However, there was another reason why Wang Chong didn't want to touch him. In the early days, Li Heng, because of his birth and weak body, was unable to cultivate martial arts. As a result, he didn't want to improve himself. But this was the complete opposite of Li Jingzhong's desire for power. Thus, in the early days, Li Jingzhong had been constantly urging, and even pressuring Li Heng, hoping that he would strive to improve himself. In this period of time, the two of them shared the same interests and goals. One could say that Li Jingzhong was doing all he could to help Li Heng. This was a honeymoon period for the two of them. It seems like Li Jingzhong hit Li Heng for this reason. In a flash, Wang Chong suddenly understood what was going on. The reason why the fifth prince Li Hengsu chose to hide in the depths of the forest after arriving at Kunwa training camp was due to his personality. However, what Li Jingzhong wanted was power. He wanted supreme power, glory, and ambition. The two of them must have gotten into an argument over this. Your Highness, pardon my offense. I didn't think that Your Highness would be in the same training camp as me. As Wang Chong spoke, his attention quickly turned to Li Heng. Haha, young Master Wang is too polite. I'm also very happy to see Duke Jiu's son here, Li Heng said with a smile. He truly had a graceful demeanor and a good personality. When he spoke of Wang Chong's grandfather, his expression was one of respect. The story of Duke Jiu and the Holy Emperor's close friendship had long since spread among the princes and princesses in the palace. As princes, there wasn't a single one of them who didn't dream of having such a good relationship when they ascended to the throne. After Duke Jiu announced his resignation, the Holy Emperor even set up a four-quarters embassy to keep Duke Jiu around, asking him for his opinion on how to punish him. Chapter 312. Your Highness, forgive Wang Chong for asking too much, but this place is remote and rarely visited. Why is Your Highness here? Wang Chong suddenly said. Moreover, with Your Highness's status, you should be able to enter Longwei, Xinwei, and Kunwu camps, right? A hint of hesitation flashed across Fifth Prince Li Heng's usually cheerful face. How could he explain the matters of the imperial palace to Wang Chong? If Your Highness finds it inconvenient to say, then forget it. Wang Chong said. It's actually nothing. A bitter smile appeared on Li Heng's face. I was born with insufficient blood energy, so I was born after only 7 months. Mother believed that I wouldn't even survive. But it was also for this reason that I was innately unsuited to cultivating martial arts. Longwei, Xinwei, Kunwu, to me there is no difference. Kunwu is quiet, and very few people come here. In comparison, I prefer this place. As Li Heng spoke, his expression suddenly became extremely bleak and desolate. He also wanted to possess unrivaled martial arts, so that he could protect the people at his side. But the truth was that he was simply unsuited to cultivating martial arts. There were countless rare and precious treasures in the palace, and even more in the treasury. But all the pills and treasures he had tried were useless. The imperial physicians, the guardians, the experts of the sects, all of them would lose their heads upon seeing him. Even his father, who he viewed as a god, could do nothing, saying that his body was too weak, and that he could not endure his strength. Thus, Li Heng had given up hope from a very young age. Years of experimenting, and taking all sorts of medicinal pills and concoctions, had caused his body to be extremely weak. The most obvious thing was that his face was forever pale, without the slightest hint of blood. If it wasn't for this reason, he wouldn't have been slapped by Li Jingjong so easily. And he wouldn't have been slapped to the ground. A person had to accept their fate. After trying everything he could think of to no avail, he had given up many years ago. Now, Li Heng only hoped to escape the whirlpool of power that the princes were fighting over, find a peaceful place, and live out the rest of his life in peace. Hee. Hearing this answer from Li Heng, a smile appeared on Wang Chang's face. He already knew the answer. The reason why he asked this was for his next goal. Your Highness, actually, if your Highness wishes to practice martial arts, I might have a way. What? These words caused Li Heng and his servant to tremble. Even Li Jingjong had forgotten his fear of Wang Chong, and looked at Wang Chong with surprise and joy. Wang Gongzi, you must be joking. Even his father, the emperor, had said that there was a way. How could there be any hope? Even I have given up hope. The light in Li Heng's eyes only flashed for a moment before dimming. Your Highness, what are you saying? A figure flashed by the side, and Li Jingjong suddenly cut in. The great ambition and desire in his heart won over his wariness and fear towards Wang Chong. If we don't try, how will we know if it works or not? Wang Gongzi, this old servant was wrong just now. Is that thing you spoke of real? If it really can cure your Highness, this old servant will kneel and work as an ox or a horse for you. Li Jingjong looked at Wang Chong, making no attempt to conceal the extreme desire in his heart, or the desire for power. He had accompanied the fifth prince for almost 10 years, so he was well aware of the fifth prince's situation. His innate flaw was the greatest constraint on him. If a person didn't have the strength, they would naturally choose to retreat. But if they were given great strength, even a country bumpkin would develop the greatest ambition. Li Jingjong was well aware of the root of this problem, so he had been trying to cure the fifth prince's illness for all these years. He would not give up even the smallest chance. This lowly person is rather diligent. Wang Chong was well aware of why Li Jingjong was doing this. Li Jingjong's performance made him even more certain of his judgment. This future villain truly would be of some use in the early stages. But Wang Chong was even more aware that he could not give him any face, and had to suppress him. Your Highness. Wang Chong ignored Li Jingjong, as if he hadn't even seen him. Instead, he turned to fifth Prince Li Heng. I'm not sure if this will work. However, not too long ago, I met an unknown peerless master. He gave me a pill, and said that this pill can cure all kinds of innate flaws. But I've never tried it, so I can't give you an answer. Wang Chong did not make any promises. Fifth Prince Li Heng had been born with an innate flaw. Other people were born in October, but he was born in July. Without 3 months, many things in a person would not be able to fully develop. The first thing Wang Chong thought of when he saw Li Heng's condition was the Stone of Destiny's blood exchange ability. Blood was the source of all qi, and the first step in cultivating martial arts was to absorb heaven and earth origin qi into one's blood. If he could exchange one person's blood, he might be able to solve Li Heng's problem. But whether it would work or not, Wang Chong had never tried it, so he did not dare to be certain. Besides, Wang Chong did not want the secret of the Stone of Destiny to be known by others. Wang Gongzi, there's no need. Li Heng habitually wanted to refuse, but upon seeing Li Jingjong's pressing gaze, he could only bitterly smile and nod. Wang Gongzi, then I'll have to trouble you. What do I need to do? I'll have to trouble you to return to Deflecting Blade Manor with me, Wang Chong said after a moment of thought. Wang Chong led Li Heng and Li Jingjong back to Deflecting Blade Manor after dark. In a secluded room on the second floor, Wang Chong had Li Heng sit on the floor. After apologizing inwardly, he took out a recovery pill and passed it over. Your Highness, swallow this pill first. Li Heng nodded and took the recovery pill from Wang Chong's hand. Is this the medicine that treats innate flaws? But it's strange, it seems a little similar to the recovery pills in the palace. Li Heng had consumed all kinds of pills since he was young, so he was extremely familiar with them. Your Highness is overthinking things. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat, but he maintained the same expression on his face as he said, pills are made from all kinds of herbs. As long as the same ingredients are used, they will give off a similar smell. How could the palace have such a pill? You're right, I'm overthinking things. Li Heng chuckled. He also felt that he was overthinking things. The pills of the palace were strictly controlled, so how could it be so easy to obtain them in the outside world? Picking up the pill with 2 fingers, Li Heng casually tossed it into his mouth and swallowed it. After so many years, after consuming so many pills, after failing so many times, Li Heng was already used to it. Wang Gongzi, what should I do now? Li Heng asked with a smile as he turned his head around. Your Highness, just sit on the floor. Wang Chong took in a deep breath, and then sat down behind Li Heng. Not even Wang Chong knew if the Stone of Destiny's blood exchange could be used or not. But this matter had to be carried out. Wang Chong had always had a favorable impression of 5th Prince Li Heng. This favorable impression was not because of personal reasons, but because Li Heng possessed a compassion that the other princes lacked, as well as a desire to revitalize the Central Plains and revitalize the Tang dynasty. Several years later, when that star of calamity from the Anong Protectorate rose up in the northeast of the Central Plains, mobilizing the armies of Yuzhou, Pinglu, and Fanyang to sweep across the world and wreak havoc on China, 5th Prince Li Heng was the only person who stayed behind for the sake of the common people, the only person who faced the danger of being killed. And when the 8 years of war left the people of the Central Plains destitute, and their supplies running low, Li Heng was the first person to call for frugality in the imperial palace and gather food for the common people. There was hope for the Tang dynasty to prosper. Li Heng was the ruler of a resurgence. But his personality was his most fatal flaw. Although he was not a weak and incompetent person, as a sovereign, he lacked a manly spirit, a firm heart, and the ability to make decisions. This was not something that could be seen when the empire was at war. But when it came to the people at his side, Li Heng's indecisiveness showed itself. If not for this, Li Jingzhong would not have risen to power, turning from Li Jingzhong into Li Fugua, ultimately becoming the first traitor in the history of the Tang dynasty and the Central Plains. In the later years of the Tang dynasty, Li Fugua single-handedly controlled the court, dictating all matters. Even Li Heng was reduced to a puppet, causing Li Heng's plans for the resurgence of the empire to come to a premature end. Of course, Wang Chong had encountered Li Heng after his rebirth, so he naturally would not allow such a thing to happen. But killing Li Fugua was useless. The root of the problem with Li Heng, the future emperor, lay in his personality. After Li Fugua's death, he could not avoid placing the eunuch closest to him in important positions, and in the end, he repeated the same fate. This led to the destruction of the hopes of the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong had once thought this matter through, and the root of the problem was that Li Heng, the future emperor, didn't know any martial arts at all. Strength strengthens one's body, strength strengthens one's courage. If Li Heng were a peerless expert like the Holy Emperor, no one, be it Li Jingzhong or anyone else, would be able to escape his grasp or play any tricks. It was precisely due to his lack of strength that Li Heng was unable to keep the eunuchs at his side in check. In fact, even a poison of unknown origin was capable of killing him without him realizing it. What Wang Chong wanted to do at this moment was to change all of this, so that Li Heng could cultivate martial arts and wield great strength. Strength strengthens one's body, strength strengthens one's courage. If Li Heng were to wield sufficient strength, he would become the next sage of the Tang dynasty. Even though he couldn't match up to the current Holy Emperor, he wouldn't be too far off. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. If Wang Chong were to have such a wise sovereign, he would be able to accomplish his mission without any restraints. These thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he quickly regained his composure. Your Highness, please focus on your abdomen with your eyes, your nose, and your heart. Chapter 313. In a flash of light, Wang Chong's consciousness entered another world. A resplendent gem appeared in Wang Chong's mind, and at the same time, many streams of information flowed through his mind. Let's first look at blood swap. With a thought, Wang Chong quickly found the Stone of Destiny's blood swap ability. The first time Wang Chong had discovered blood swap, this ability had still been sealed. But as Wang Chong's total destiny points surpassed 100, this ability had been unsealed. Blood swap. Elementary cleanse a martial artist's blood once. altering their talent and bloodline. It allows those who are naturally weak and unable to cultivate martial arts to gain the ability to do so. Effective for the majority of those who are unable to cultivate martial arts. Ineffective for a small portion. Exchange points 30. It's only 5 points higher than Panther Bone's ability. Wang Chong thought to himself. Blood Swap was on the same level as Panther Bone, and the two appeared on the same level. Blood Swap was only a little higher than Panther Bone. However, Wang Chong was well aware that the most powerful aspect of this ability was not its ability to cleanse a martial artist's blood, but the fact that it could easily overlook altering a martial artist's talent. This was a hidden ability, and it was probably the reason why Blood Swap was 5 points higher than Panther Bone's. Moreover, this ability did not require any medicinal pills, but was directly used on the target. No other method could compare to it. I wonder if it will be effective on the fifth prince, Wang Chong said to himself, not feeling very confident. The information provided by the Stone of Destiny clearly stated that this ability was not omnipotent. It could be effective on the vast majority of martial artists, but not everyone. I hope that it will succeed. As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Chong immediately exchanged for this ability. Rumble. The Stone of Destiny suddenly trembled, and a scorching flood of energy gushed out of his mind, flowing through Wang Chong's arm, and into Fifth Prince Li Heng's body. Buzz! Li Heng had been indifferent at the start, but when this tyrannical and scorching energy surged into his body, Li Heng grimaced and immediately focused his mind. Following Wang Chong's instructions, he began to channel this energy into his body. The blood exchange was far more tyrannical than Wang Chong had imagined. Wherever the energy passed, even Wang Chong's veins bulged. He felt as if his skin was about to explode. Li Heng's entire body trembled. His senses were even sharper than Wang Chong's. When that energy entered his body, Li Heng felt like his body had been set ablaze. Wherever that ball of energy passed, he felt as if all the blood in his body was boiling, burning, and then evaporating, as if countless needles were pricking him. Because of his frail body, he had gone through all kinds of treatments, taken all kinds of pills, and experienced all kinds of pain, but none of them could compare to what he was experiencing now. His entire body felt like it was being torn apart piece by piece. Cold sweat began to seep out of Li Heng's forehead, and more of it began to pour out. The Stone of Destiny's energy continued to flow through Wang Chong's body and into Li Heng. A moment later, the final sliver of energy from the Stone of Destiny finally flowed into Li Heng's body, and Wang Chong's body finally loosened. Then he stood up. It's all up to him now. Wang Chong looked at the seated Li Heng as he thought. He had already accomplished his task, but Li Heng's was far from done. It was impossible for a person to undergo a complete blood exchange within a short period of time. Not to mention, the Stone of Destiny had the ability to alter a person's talent. It would take at least an hour for the energy that had flowed into Li Heng's body to complete the transformation. Wang Chong didn't dare to stray too far away. He stood by Li Heng's side, watching over the latter anxiously. This plan wasn't just about a single prince, but the future of the Tang dynasty and the Central Plains. For a very long time, other than Zhang Munian's hybrid rice project, this was the most important matter to Wang Chong. Reshaping a future sage monarch, making him powerful, courageous, and daring. It would rid him of the weakness in his personality and turn him into a sage monarch capable of leading the Tang dynasty toward a bright future. To Wang Chong, this was something he didn't even dare to dream of in the past. The stroke of fate had suddenly given Wang Chong an unimaginable opportunity. Even Li Heng himself had no idea why Wang Chong was doing this. Time slowly passed. Li Heng gritted his teeth tightly, and his body trembled more and more intensely. His clothes were already completely drenched. Even a spectator like Wang Chong could sense the immense pain he was in, and the pain was only growing more and more intense by the moment. Tap tap. A series of anxious and uneasy footsteps sounded from outside. It was Li Jingzhong's voice. This future scheming minister, traitorous official, and eunuch was also enduring immense pain. Every time he discovered a new treatment method, Li Jingzhong's heart would be filled with anticipation. Power, dreams, ambitions. Regardless of what Li Jingzhong would become in the future, at the very least, at this moment, he was wholeheartedly considering for Li Heng. Wang Gongzi, how is it? Li Jingzhong's footsteps suddenly stopped at the door, and a pair of anxious eyes could be vaguely seen through the door. Didn't I tell you to wait outside? Wang Chong replied coldly, paying no heed to Li Heng at all. With an embarrassed expression, Li Jingzhong began pacing outside once more. Even though this was the first time they met, Li Jingzhong had already begun to feel a little fearful of this Wang clan Gongzi. The room was silent. After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong felt that Li Heng's body was no longer trembling as intensely as before. The effects of the Stone of Destiny are fading. Wang Chong nodded in realization. The fading of the Stone of Destiny meant that Li Heng's modification was nearing completion. Roughly a tea's time later, Li Heng suddenly opened his eyes and exhaled deeply. How is it? The moment the door opened, Li Jingzhong barged in and stared at Li Heng with a look of yearning. This fellow had been peeping outside the door all this time. Wang Chong fiercely glared at him, but he did not argue with him. Your Highness, how are you feeling? Wang Chong asked concernedly. His current nervousness was no less than Li Jingzhong's, or rather, he was even more nervous than Li Jingzhong. At this moment, the room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The gazes of the duo fell on Li Heng. Li Heng didn't speak. Instead, he suddenly closed his eyes, as if sensing the state of his body. It feels like nothing has changed. Li Xiang opened his eyes with a puzzled look. What? Li Jingzhong found it hard to conceal the disappointment in his eyes. Is it still useless? His ambition and desires had risen and fallen with this treatment time and time again, brimming with hope, only to vanish into thin air time and time again. At this moment, Li Jingzhong felt even worse than Li Heng. Wang Chong said nothing, but the look in his eyes was more than enough to explain the situation. This blood exchange cost him 30 fate points, which was not a small amount. Hearing Li Heng's words, Wang Chong remained calm on the surface, but inwardly, he was quite dejected. In this operation, he was the one who had been the most important. Did not even the blood exchange work? Wang Chong found it hard to conceal his disappointment. The blood exchange plan had been an ideal outcome in Wang Chong's heart. If it could change Li Heng's condition, that would be for the best. But he hadn't expected it to fail in the end. There wasn't even the slightest hope. Congratulations to user for participating in the War of the Princes, participating in the future True Dragon plan, and changing the fate of 5th Prince Li Heng. You have been awarded 45 fate points. Wang. Just when Wang Chong was filled with disappointment, a voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Upon hearing this voice, Wang Chong's heart was suddenly filled with joy, and his gloomy eyes suddenly lit up. That's not right. Try again and feel it. Wang Chong suddenly grabbed 5th Prince Li Heng's arm, a look of ecstasy on his face. What's wrong? Li Heng and Li Jingzhong both had strange looks on their faces. Li Heng had long ago become accustomed to failure, and Li Jingzhong had long ago accepted reality. On the other hand, Wang Chong's face was flushed, and his mind was in high spirits. There was no way that he was feeling this sort of joy. Try again, Your Highness, try again. Wang Chong said. He was extremely familiar with the abilities of the Stone of Destiny. If Li Heng had failed, there would have been no congratulatory voice. Since a reward had appeared in his mind, it had definitely been effective. But as for what exactly had happened, Wang Chong wasn't very clear. No, there hasn't been any change. Young Master Wang, what's wrong? A few moments later, Li Heng opened his eyes, a look of confusion on his face. Wang Chong said nothing, only examined Li Heng. Wang Chong knew that something had definitely changed, just that he didn't know. No, it's not that there hasn't been any change. Your Highness, look at your face. Wang Chong suddenly said as he stared at Li Heng's face. Li Heng's face had always been weak, pale, and abnormally pale. But now, a hint of color had returned to his face, and he didn't look much different from a normal person. It's true. An ecstatic voice rang out. Li Jingzhong had also noticed at Wang Chong's reminder. He had spent a lot of time with Prince Li Heng, so he had a deep understanding of his condition. Li Heng's complexion truly was much better. She was produced from within, So something had definitely happened to Li Heng's body. Your Highness, try again. There must have been some change, Li Jingzhong said with a hopeful expression. A copper mirror was quickly delivered to Li Heng. This time, Li Heng also noticed it. But to his confusion, he truly didn't feel any change. I know. Chapter 314. Your Highness, follow my instructions and practice martial arts for a while. Your foundation is lacking, and you've never cultivated martial arts before. So even though I've treated you, there won't be any fundamental change. Wang Chong finally understood where the root of the problem lay. The Stone of Destiny's blood interchangeability could only change one's bloodline and talent. It could not suddenly make one stronger or increase one's strength. In other words, if Li Heng had been powerless before, he would still be powerless right now, so he wouldn't feel any different. The Stone of Destiny's blood interchangeability could not create a supreme expert out of thin air. Now that Wang Chong had mentioned it, the two of them vaguely understood where the problem lay. In a flash, both Li Heng and Li Jingzhong felt a glimmer of hope in their eyes. There's no need, I know a technique, Li Heng suddenly said. He was even more hopeful than Wang Chong. In the long years that had passed, he had hoped countless times that his body would change. Indifference and indifference were not because he truly didn't care. Rather, it was because he had failed so many times that he had long since gotten used to it. It was not because he had no hope for greater strength. On the contrary, a crippled person longed to walk normally, while a blind person longed for the white sunlight. Although it was just a change in his complexion, it was the best news that had happened to Li Heng in the last countless years, the greatest change. As for martial arts, this was not a problem. The imperial household had no lack of them. Moreover, there was a set of martial arts that he had already deeply engraved in his bones. Bang! Amidst Wang Chong and Li Jingzhong's gazes, Li Heng suddenly punched out. This punch was extremely smooth, and it seemed to have been tempered thousands of times. It didn't seem like a beginner's punch at all. Not bad. Wang Chong took 2 steps back, a hint of shock in his eyes. Li Heng's punch had both form and spirit. Even with his current level of cultivation, he couldn't help but praise it. He couldn't find any fault with it. Bang! After punching, Li Heng stomped down. Bang! This stomp was extremely heavy, and the vague image of a dragon appeared behind Li Heng. This dragon was only the size of an arm, and looked very small. At first glance it looked like a flood serpent. However, when Wang Chong saw the dragon's toe clearly, he was shocked. 5 fingers. Raising his head to look at Li Heng, Wang Chong felt completely different. So the Holy Emperor was prepared. 4-clawed pythons, heaven dragons, 5-clawed true dragons, and 6-clawed flood dragons did not necessarily have more claws. The dragon on Li Heng's back was unremarkable at first glance. If Wang Chong hadn't happened to see it, he wouldn't have known that the dragon actually had 5 claws. The imperial clan has strict rules, and would never casually pass it down. For Li Heng to have a 5-clawed dragon on his back, just what is going on? Wang Chong was astonished. There was only one person who dared to teach Li Heng the 5-clawed true dragon technique. But that person clearly knew that Li Heng could not learn martial arts, and that he did not seek to improve himself. So why did he still do this? Could it be that there were some hidden secrets? Wang Chong muttered to himself in deep thought. However, Wang Chong didn't have the time to ponder over these questions, because an unimaginable transformation was happening to Li Heng's body. Pung pung pung. The crackling of Li Heng's bones grew louder and louder, and gusts of wind began to swirl around him. Origin Energy Tier 4. Wang Chong was astonished. In the blink of an eye, Li Heng had advanced from Origin Energy Tier 1 to Tier 2 to Tier 3 and Tier 4. Only when one's blood essence seeped into one's bones and entered the marrow channeling realm would such a crackling sound occur. However, the transformation to Li Heng's body wasn't as simple as just the crackling sound. Wang Chong could sense that something was bubbling within Li Heng's body. It was an immense amount of energy reminiscent of a volcano. Pill energy. Wang Chong suddenly understood what was going on. In Li Heng's body, he had consumed all kinds of pills, medicinal herbs, rare treasures, and even the energy left behind by many supreme experts. Due to Li Heng's condition, this enormous amount of energy couldn't be exerted at all. Instead, it remained in Li Heng's body, accumulating in his cells. Not only did the origin energy of countless experts and pills not help Li Heng, they even became a burden on him. It was as if he didn't have the strength of 1,000 jin, but he was carrying 1,000 jin of gold on his back. This was why Li Heng's face was so pale. But now that Li Heng had resolved his bloodline problem and innate flaws, this enormous burden immediately transformed into his true wealth and treasure. Understanding this, Wang Chong understood what was going to happen next. Hong Long Long. The stellar energy around Li Heng's body grew stronger and stronger, and the fierce winds began to drag the tables and chairs into the air. Boom! With a heaven-shaking boom, the tables and chairs that had been dragged into the room were smashed to pieces by Li Heng. At the same time, Li Heng's aura broke through Tier 5, Tier 6 and finally Tier 7. But Li Heng's strength had already reached Origin Energy Tier 9, and he wasn't inferior to Wang Chong in the slightest. As a descendant of the Imperial clan, a descendant of the dragon, he had access to countless resources. In this aspect, no one could compare to him. Haha, martial arts. I can also practice martial arts. I can finally practice martial arts. An excited and frenzied voice filled with boundless joy echoed in the deflecting blade manner. Li Heng stood in the room, his hair ribbons fluttering in the wind. His eyes shone with an unprecedented radiance, as if the sun in the sky. At this moment, Li Heng was completely different. He was brimming with confidence, joy, and a desire that even he didn't notice. That's great, that's great. Your Highness, you can finally practice martial arts. Li Jingzhong's body trembled in excitement, and he was on the verge of dancing. After so many years, he had finally waited for this hope. He had finally waited for the day that 5th Prince Li Heng could practice martial arts. All of this was so sudden, so unbelievable. But it really happened in front of him. This was a miracle. Wonderful, wonderful. Wang Gongzi, thank you, thank you. In the future, this old servant will definitely do whatever Wang Gongzi says. Other than His Highness, the life of Li Jingzhong is yours. Li Jingzhong suddenly hugged Wang Chong in agitation. You're the one who said it. Wang Chong looked at the incoherent Li Jingzhong, and he found the entire situation comical. If Li Jingzhong knew that he would one day become the powerful and treacherous minister, Li Fugua, he would definitely regret saying those words. Of course, Li Jingzhong was still in a state of depression at the moment, so it was hard to predict what would happen in the future. And Wang Chong wouldn't allow him to become the future treacherous minister, Li Fugua. As long as this fellow showed the slightest hint of treachery, Wang Chong would deal with him personally. I'm the one who said it. I'm the one who said it. Every word of mine is sincere, and the heavens can guide me. Li Jingzhong raised 2 fingers and swore to the heavens. In his eyes, the current Wang Chong was a lucky star that had descended from the heavens. In this world, there was no one more amiable, respectable, and adorable than this Wang Chong Gongzi of the Wang clan. For a servant who served him to swear loyalty to another, no matter how one thought about it, it was bizarre. But at this moment, Li Heng didn't think so at all. Wang Chong, thank you. I will always remember this favor. Li Heng grabbed Wang Chong's hands, and his face was flushed in agitation. His long nightmare had finally come to an end, and Li Heng had never been so happy and elated before. Which man didn't want to possess great strength? And now he had finally obtained it. Even though they had only just met, in Li Heng's heart, Wang Chong was already his most important friend. Your Highness is being too polite. I'm glad that I was able to help Your Highness. Wang Chong said gratifyingly. The current Li Heng was clearly much more proactive and confident than before. This was an excellent change. Power could change one's personality and increase one's boldness and decisiveness. Wang Chong knew that the moment Li Heng obtained power, he had walked a different path from his last life. A path that Wang Chong truly wanted him to walk. Li Heng possessed kindness, compassion, and the desire and ambition to revitalize the Central Plains and the Tang dynasty. And now, Wang Chong had used his own method to give him the power to realize his blueprint. It was already late, and Li Heng didn't stay long in Wang Chong's deflecting blade manner. Having just obtained power, he was already impatient to return to his room and experience this unprecedented power. Wang Chong knew what he was thinking, so he didn't urge him to stay. Taking advantage of the darkness, he escorted him out of Deflecting Blade Manor. On the way down the mountain, Li Heng and Li Jingzhong repeatedly thanked Wang Chong. Young master. Once Li Heng left, Zhao Jingdian walked over, and the mood instantly became somewhat heavy. These are the letters we received today while you were away. There were princes, princesses, and even consorts from the palace. A few of them even came to Deflecting Blade Manor while you were away. Zhao Jingdian passed over a stack of letters. The fifth prince had been present at night, so Zhao Jingdian hadn't told Wang Chong about it. After meeting Princess Enai Huang earlier in the day, and being tormented by an old nanny, Zhao Jingdian had already gotten used to it. What he was worried about now was something else. If this matter isn't resolved, it will never end. Tomorrow more princes and princesses will come. Young master can escape this life, but you can't escape this life. Besides, does young master think that madam and the others can escape? Zhao Jingdian hesitated for a moment before speaking. Wang Chong could escape into the mountains, but Wang Chong's mother couldn't. Moreover, if the consorts of the palace came to summon her, what would the old madam do? She couldn't possibly escape like Wang Chong, could she? Wang Chong's complexion wasn't very good. The princes and princesses were one thing, but even the consorts of the palace had joined in. It was clear that the princes were trying to put pressure on him. He could think of a way to avoid the princes and princesses, but the consorts of the palace weren't easy to deal with. Chapter 315. There's no need for you to worry. I already have an idea, Wang Chong indifferently said, his expression brimming with confidence. After wandering the mountains for so long, it wasn't as if he had come up empty-handed. Rather than being passive, it was better to take the initiative. Wang Chong quickly understood what he had to do. Walking into the study, Wang Chong quickly wrote a few letters. Jingdian, do as I say tomorrow. Bring the spirit vein to the places I've mentioned, and go to the Court of Judicial Review to take the deed. After that, send it to the Imperial Palace along with these letters. Divide? Zhao Jingdian's eyes widened as he keenly noticed the hidden meaning in Wang Chong's words. We're meat on the chopping block. Right now, in the eyes of the princes, young masters, and consorts in the Imperial Palace, we're nothing more than a fat piece of meat. We can't afford to offend any of them. Rather than let them come knocking on our door, it's better to take a portion of the spirit vein, so that everyone can have a share. Firstly, this will serve as an explanation and prevent us from offending the members of the imperial clan. Secondly, if everyone gets a share, they can keep each other in check, lest they try to take the spirit vein for themselves. Wang Chong said, the War of the Princes was a massive whirlpool, and it was more dangerous than any whirlpool. No matter how deep the Wang clan's reserves were, it wasn't enough to survive in this whirlpool. Since ancient times, many great clans have been killed, or had their clans wiped out, because they were embroiled in the War of the Princes. Even the Wang clan paled in comparison to some of these behemoths. If even these ancient clans had suffered such a fate, the Wang clan wouldn't be much better off. Dividing the spirit vein into sections, and sending out a portion, was enough to turn passivity into initiative. This was the best way to deal with this crisis. Although it wasn't enough to satisfy any of the princes, it was enough to ensure the Wang clan's safety. Moreover, through this method, the Wang clan would be able to form a connection with the princes and princesses, which would be beneficial to the Wang clan in the future. After sending Zhao Jingdian away, Wang Chong finally calmed down and began to ponder the matter of 5th Prince Li Heng. Exchanging blood cost me 30 points of life force, but after the 5th prince consumed it, he rewarded me with 45 points of life force, earning me an additional 15 destiny points. It's really unbelievable. It seems that my judgment was correct. The greater the danger, the greater the opportunity, and the higher the level involved, the more generous the reward. Wang Chong recalled the information he had heard from the Stone of Destiny. Stopping the Gogurian's assassination attempt and killing King Sojurum would only earn him 10 destiny energy. Wang Chong had only been rewarded with 25 points of destiny energy for changing the fate of his clan. But changing 5th Prince Li Heng's blood and altering his martial talent had been rewarded with 45 points of destiny energy. This kind of reward could not be said to be lacking. Something's wrong. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Wang Chong suddenly realized that he had overlooked a piece of information. The True Dragon Project. Other than the War of the Princes, there was also the True Dragon Project. He could understand the War of the Princes, but the True Dragon Project, in other words, this is only the beginning. In the future, when I participate in Prince Li Heng's ascension to the throne, I'll be rewarded with a large amount of destiny energy. Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. Even though it was tempting, as an experienced person, Wang Chong knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger. It wasn't as easy as it seemed on the surface. Unknowingly, he had already stepped onto two dangerous paths that even the prestigious clans and nobles would avoid. Furthermore, from the Stone of Destiny's notification, he had already been dragged into it, and there was no turning back. On one side was a bottomless abyss, and on the other was a great rock. There was no turning back. I can only take it one step at a time, Wang Chong sighed. In the future, the imperial court would become even more treacherous and dangerous. The peace and tranquility on the surface would be replaced by storms and dangers. Countless great clans would be annihilated, and countless officials who had been chatting and laughing in the court would have their heads rolled, their blood splattering 3 feet across the ground. The peace would not last for long. Being dragged into the War of the Princes, into the path of the True Dragon, meant that he would stand at the center of this storm. But Wang Chong was well aware that he had no other choice. Even without the matter of Li Heng, he would still inevitably be dragged into it in the future. With this thought, Wang Chong quickly closed his eyes. The light went out with a puff. While Wang Chong was in deflecting blade manner, his mind entering the spirit realm of the Great Void. In the capital, there was a brightly lit courtyard in another residence. In the light, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen had a deep frown on his face. As the head of the Wang clan, and a major second-rank official of the imperial court, Wang Zhen rarely encountered anything worthy of a frown. But this time, Wang Zhen was truly perplexed. Master, what else is there to consider? Isn't it just a spirit vein? Just have that brat handed over. Everything is for the benefit of the clan. Does that brat dare to resist? A sharp and unkind voice came from the side. It was Wang Chong's big aunt's voice. Although Wang Chong was no longer the same as before, and had become an important figure in the Wang clan, even Wang Zhen was now very close to him. But Wang Chong's big aunt's view of Wang Chong had not changed in the slightest. The more dazzling Wang Chong's performance was, the greater the danger she felt. You're just a woman. You don't know anything. So what nonsense are you spouting? Wang Zhen rebuked. I'm spouting nonsense. It's one thing if it were any other time. But the first prince is the future emperor. However, the first prince is the future emperor. If he wants the spirit vein, he won't be able to find such a good opportunity. What is there to hesitate about? Madame Xing stood up from her seat and berated Wang Zhen furiously. Even a woman like her could see through it. Yet a man like Wang Zhen was hesitating, unable to say anything. Even she couldn't bear to watch on. What do you know? The spirit vein belongs to Chong'er. If it were mine, I would have long given it to the first prince. Besides, do you know what a spirit vein is? Even the 3 great training camps appointed by the Holy Emperor only have ordinary spirit veins. And the spirit vein that Chong'er has is more than 10 times stronger than those. Wang Zhen said with a dark expression. Even though he was a politician, he knew what a massive spirit vein meant to a clan. A spirit vein like this could create a large number of experts for a clan in a short period of time, allowing them to have countless experts. With a spirit vein of this caliber, such a clan would be able to maintain its glory for at least several hundred years. If not for that, how could Wang Chong's spirit vein cause such a huge uproar in the capital? I think you're muddle-headed. Without the spirit vein, you should think about how you're going to answer to the first prince. After berating Wang Zhen, Madame Xing flung her sleeves and stormed out. The moment Madame Xing left, the room fell silent. Wang Zhen looked at the flickering candle on the table and sighed deeply. Then he picked up the letter in his hand. It was a thin piece of paper, and it was a handwritten letter from the first prince. There were only a few words on it. He wishes to meet with Wang Chong. Even though it was just a few words, the first prince's intentions were clear. His goal wasn't the spirit vein but Wang Chong. The first prince wanted to rope in Wang Chong. Forget it, I'll just call Chonger over. Wang Zhen sighed, but he still made up his mind. Madame Xing might be muddle-headed, but her words weren't without reason. After all, the first prince was the eldest son of the first wife, and the Tang dynasty was ultimately his. With such thoughts in mind, Wang Zhen picked up the brush on the table. Walala! Soon, a pigeon flew out of the window. The spirit vein. Unbelievable. In the depths of the night, several figures, one tall and one short, stood on the opposite mountain, gazing at the spirit vein that resembled a crouching beast. In the darkness of the night, billowing white steam rose into the air, creating a dazzling sight. That was the concentrated spiritual energy in the air. This was a beautiful sight that could only be seen at night. The billowing white steam stretched for several hundred li in the darkness, creating a majestic sight. If not for the news being released, no one would have known that there would be such a majestic sight so close to the capital. That child of the Wang clan is truly inconceivable. Indeed, the baleful aura here is so dense. Even a seer wouldn't be able to divine this place. And there are so many venomous snakes and ferocious beasts around. Yet he was still able to find his way here. The official road is more than 10 li away. The two of them couldn't help but sigh when they learned that the owner of the spirit vein was Wang Chong of the Wang clan, and that he had purchased the land deed from the Court of Judicial Review a few months ago. They felt an indescribable emotion welling up within them. This matter was simply too mystical. The name of Wang Chong had just shaken the world after the regional commander's incident. But who could have thought that he would become the owner of this massive spirit vein? In that instant, there was only one thought in the minds of the duo. Heavenly means. It might have been a coincidence once, but it might not be the same the second time. At this moment, that 15-year-old child of the Wang clan had already become an unfathomable figure in their eyes. In fact, the two of them even felt a tinge of respect for that child. No, it shouldn't be a child. Most likely, that child was the future successor of the Wang clan, the true successor of Duke Jiao. I heard that the one from the Wang clan has established a deflecting blade manor in the Kunwa training camp and is currently recruiting members. Tell Kuor to go over. That child's future is limitless. If this trend continues, the Wang clan will be like the sun in the sky, even stronger and more glorious than when Duke Jiao was in his prime. If we can form a good relationship with him, we might be able to reap some unexpected rewards in the future. Yes, clan head. I will instruct Kuor to seek refuge with that Wang Chong Gongzi. The other figure replied respectfully. The former nodded and fell silent. Looking from the sky, one could see countless figures lurking in the vicinity of the spirit vein. Tonight, countless experts from the prestigious clans had come to investigate the situation. Chapter 316. The night slowly fell silent. In the vicinity of the spirit vein, silhouettes began to slowly retreat. Occasionally, a cry of agony could be heard, but it was soon replaced by silence. Even though the spiritual energy within the spirit vein was dense, no one dared to barge in. After a day of chaos and more than a dozen corpses, everyone knew that there was an extremely formidable figure within the spirit vein. Those who barged in felt as though they had entered a completely different world. Not a single sound could be heard, and a moment later, their corpses would be tossed out like wooden logs. Every single one of them had died a tragic death, as though their hearts had been pierced by 1,000 swords. By now, very few people were foolish enough to barge in. The sky gradually brightened, and the crowd slowly retreated. On top of the spirit vein, a thick layer of fog shrouded the area. The evil emperor gazed into the distance and heaved a long sigh. From dawn to dusk, and then to dawn again, he had dealt with countless groups of spies with ill intentions. Yet the number of silhouettes outside the mountain only continued to increase. Even the evil emperor felt a slight headache creeping in. Without forceful means, he wouldn't be able to display his benevolence. Fortunately, after killing a few experts who had barged in, the momentum finally came to a halt. Otherwise, the entire spirit vein would become an ownerless land, and anyone would be able to enter and leave freely. As a result, Wang Chong's training plans could no longer be carried out. Let's hope that the momentum can be stopped, the demonic emperor old man sighed. And then he took out a pigeon from his wide sleeve. With a flick of his hands, he sent the pigeon into the sky. Regardless of whether it was good or bad, he should inform Wang Chong of this matter, and let him make the final decision. At noon, a green carriage slowly moved along the bustling streets, before finally stopping in front of the residence of an important official of the royal court. Wang General, the doors of the carriage opened, and Wang Chong walked out. After spending half a day, Wang Chong finally settled all of his affairs before arriving at Big Uncle Wang Jin's residence. A tall wall surrounded Big Uncle Wang Jin's residence. 2 massive lions squatted in front of the gate, and 2 large red lanterns hung down from the walls. Through the open door, one could vaguely see the luxuriant bamboo forest inside, fresh and elegant. Big Uncle Wang Jin was not a pure warrior. Strictly speaking, he was a civil official. These lush bamboos were exactly the same as the ones in grandfather's 4 quarters embassy, in line with the Confucian preference for plums, orchids, chrysanthemums, and bamboos. This wasn't the first time Wang Chong had been here, but his mood this time was very different. About that matter, I should tell Uncle about it. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind as he gazed at the majestic Wang residence before him. He had received Big Uncle Wang Jin's messenger pigeon last night, but Wang Chong did not reply immediately. Instead, he waited until now to pay a visit personally. With a flick of his robe, Wang Chong strode inside. Young master. At the entrance of the Wang mansion, 4 Wang clan guards stood in a line. When they saw Wang Chong, their faces tightened, and they revealed respectful expressions. One by one they bowed in unison. This respect came from the bottom of their hearts, without the slightest bit of pretense. This wasn't Wang Chong's first time here. In the past, everyone thought that the youngest son of the 3rd old master would be an unruly and mischievous person, so they couldn't help but look down on him. But in the past half a year, Wang Chong seemed to have changed into a completely different person. Seeing his actions, everyone's respect for Wang Chong grew. Thus, upon seeing Wang Chong this time, the 4 guards immediately stepped forward to pay their respects. Is Big Uncle in? Wang Chong asked. He's in. The 1st old master knows that Gongzi will be coming, so he has been waiting in the study. Gongzi, do you need us to inform him? There's no need for that, I can go by myself. Wang Chong waved his hands, stepped over the door sill and walked in. Passing through garden after garden, waterside pavilions, fake mountains and bamboo forests, Wang Chong stopped outside Big Uncle Wang Jin's study. A familiar sniffle could be vaguely heard in the room. Looking at the purple-brown door, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, and many thoughts flashed across his mind. There was a matter that he had been trying to avoid mentioning to Big Uncle, but Big Uncle's letter had left him with no way out. Eldest Uncle would never have thought that what he was doing now was completely wrong. The closer he got to the first prince, the more danger he would be in. In his previous life, with his grandfather's influence and illustrious achievements, even though they fell for the Yao clan's schemes and offended the King of Song and King Qi, the Wang clan was still able to survive. But the relationship between Big Uncle and the first prince had destroyed this final sliver of hope. Given Big Uncle's many years of experience and achievements, even if he had chosen the wrong side in every political storm, the worst that could happen to him was a demotion. But he ended up getting swept into the most dangerous war of the crown prince. This was the true reason why the Wang clan fell out of favor, and after Wang Chong's death, it quickly fell into decline. In an instant, the Wang clan fell from a prestigious clan of generals and ministers to the lowest level of society. Wang Chong had been trying to avoid mentioning this point, but at this moment, he had no choice but to bring it up. Sigh, I hope that Big Uncle can listen to me. Wang Chong gave a deep sigh as he quietly said to himself, Chong, are you here? Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a dignified voice sounded from the room. It was Big Uncle Wang Chong's voice. Recovering from his daze, Wang Chong knocked on the door and walked in. Big Uncle. As soon as Wang Chong walked in, he saw Big Uncle seated at the back of the red sandalwood study. Before him was a thick stack of documents, seemingly in the midst of dealing with the affairs of the royal court. "Chonga, you're here." Wang Jin chuckled as he drained the ink from the brush in his hand and casually hung it on the brush rack on the study table. After working for an entire morning, he was feeling a little tired. "Sit." Wang Jin stood up from behind the study table and sat down on a round tea table not too far away. There was a pot of tea and 2 teacups on the table. Wang Jin first poured a cup of tea for the 2 of them, before beckoning Wang Chong to take a seat not too far away from him. The fact that Wang Chong was able to sit so close to him was more than enough to prove the relationship between Wang Jin and Wang Chong, this pair of uncle and nephew. Wang Chong didn't say a word as he sat down beside Big Uncle. "Chonga, how are things in the training camp?" Wang Jin placed the teacup back on the table and asked slowly. "It's fine," Wang Chong said. "That's good. If there's anything you need our help with, feel free to let me know." Wang Chong nodded. "You should have received my letter, right?" Wang Jin didn't waste any time and went straight to the main topic. Wang Chong's heart tightened. He already knew what Big Uncle Wang Jin was going to say. "Chonga, I won't hide it from you. Actually, the one who wishes to meet you this time is the first prince. The first prince knows many things about you, and he admires you greatly. Thus, he hopes that you can serve him." Wang Jin said seriously. "The first prince wishes to recruit me?" Wang Chong raised his head. "Yes." Wang Jin nodded solemnly. Wang Chong was an intelligent person, and there were many things that couldn't be hidden from him. Thus, Wang Jin didn't try to hide anything from him and spoke honestly. "Chonga, I know that the spirit vein is important to you. However, the first prince is the future successor to the throne, and the entire Tang dynasty will be his in the future. It's rare for the first prince to take the initiative to seek you out, so I hope that you can consider it carefully. With your intelligence and wisdom, the first prince will definitely put you in an important position. This is beneficial to both you and our Wang clan. This is also for the benefit of the clan, so Big Uncle hopes that you can consider it carefully." After saying this, Wang Jin stared unblinkingly at Wang Chong, waiting for his intelligent nephew's reply. Hearing his big uncle's words, Wang Chong fell silent. His big uncle rarely brought up the benefits of the clan in front of him, and he rarely spoke in such a righteous manner. These words were more than enough to show the urgency in his big uncle's heart. Without a doubt, his big uncle hoped that he could join him and pledge loyalty to the first prince. But Wang Chong knew that there was no way he would agree. This wasn't just because Wang Chong was familiar with history and knew that the future emperor would be the 5th Prince Li Hong, and not the first prince. More importantly, it was because of the first prince's personality. There was a major problem with the first prince's personality. If not for this major flaw in his personality, 5th Prince Li Hong would never have been able to ascend to the throne. If not for this flaw in his personality, he would never have committed such a treasonous act, implicating his big uncle and the entire Wang clan, and even losing his right to be the heir apparent. But this wasn't the most fundamental problem. The most fundamental problem was that the first prince was not a benevolent ruler, so he was not a suitable candidate for the throne. Thus, even if that incident hadn't occurred, given his personality, he would definitely have committed even more treasonous acts. In his last life, Wang Chong had a chance to interact with the first prince. His personality was one that could not tolerate others disobeying him. This was also the reason why Wang Chong had reservations about the first prince. A single mistake could cause everlasting regret, and Wang Chong didn't want the Wang clan to repeat the mistakes of his last life and fall into a state of extinction. "Big uncle, I'm afraid that I can't agree to your request." Wang Chong looked into his big uncle's hopeful eyes and slowly, but firmly said these words. Each of these words carried a heavy weight, clearly expressing Wang Chong's resolve. "Why?" Wang Jin asked. He knew that Wang Chong wouldn't be easy to persuade, but he hadn't expected Wang Chong to reject him so decisively. There was no room for negotiation. "Chonga, big uncle knows that my request might be a little excessive. But Chonga, big uncle hopes that you can consider it carefully. After all, the first prince is the future emperor. Wang Zhen said. Given the intelligence, wisdom, courage and daring that Wang Chong had displayed, if he could serve the first prince, the Wang clan would surely reach even greater heights, perhaps even surpassing his father at his peak. On this point, Wang Zhen shared the same opinion as Madame Xing. Chapter 317. Big Uncle, do you really think that the first prince will be the future emperor? Wang Chong suddenly asked. The moment he said those words, Wang Zhen's face immediately warped. Chong, what do you mean by that? Do you know what you're saying? Wang Zhen had been speaking to Wang Chong amicably all this while, but upon hearing Wang Chong's words, his face suddenly turned grim. You can only say these words to me. If others misunderstand and think that our Wang clan has ulterior motives, do you know what the consequences will be? If Wang Chong's words were heard by others and spread to the outside world, it would probably cause an earthquake. Big Uncle, I know what I'm doing. On the other hand, Wang Chong's expression was surprisingly calm. He had always been filled with respect for Big Uncle Wang General. It was impossible to sever the bloodline between them. Not to mention, most of the time, Big Uncle's actions were for the sake of the Wang clan's interests. But regarding the matter of the first prince, Wang Chong couldn't agree with Big Uncle. But Big Uncle, have you ever thought about the consequences of our Wang clan failing to ascend the throne? Those words were like a bolt of lightning crashing into Wang Zhen's head. A look of astonishment surfaced on his face. What would happen if the first prince failed to ascend the throne? Wang Zhen had never considered such a possibility before. Or rather, Wang Zhen had never thought of such a possibility at all. Chong'er, you're still too young. There are some things that you still don't understand. Since ancient times, only the first prince stands, and the other princes have no hope. Furthermore, you don't understand the first prince like I do. Even though His Majesty hasn't conferred him the title of Crown Prince yet, the first prince's actions are no different from a crown prince's. By the time His Majesty passes away, the first prince's ascension to the throne is already a done deal. Regardless of whether it's in or out of the royal court, everyone has the same opinion on this matter. Wang Zhen shook his head. After the initial shock, he quickly calmed down. His nephew might be intelligent, but he was still lacking in the political arena. This kind of thing could not be achieved by just being smart. One must also have enough life experience and life experience. In Wang Zhen's view, the possibility that the first prince would be unable to ascend to the throne was completely impossible. Uncle, Wang Chong shook his head. I can listen to your opinion on other matters, but please forgive me for not being able to help you with this matter. Eldest uncle said that since ancient times, the elders should not be supported by the young. This point was not wrong, but I would like to ask, if the first prince is really so outstanding, if His Majesty really likes him, then why didn't His Majesty officially make him the crown prince? The matters in the imperial court were treacherous. Eldest uncle thought that he would be able to enjoy glory and wealth by following the first prince. He was really taking it for granted. In the battle of the crown prince, it was extremely dangerous to take things for granted. Wang Zhen's lips parted and he froze. His Majesty had great trust in the first prince. Of this Wang Zhen was certain. If that was not the case, he would not have sought refuge with the first prince. Wang Zhen wanted to refute Wang Chong's words, but he was unable to find the words to do so, because what Wang Chong said was the truth. His Majesty doted on the first prince deeply, and he would even allow him to participate in the royal court from time to time. This was no different from the crown prince. But what was strange was that His Majesty did not confer the first prince the crown prince. It was one thing if the first prince was still young, but the first prince was no longer young. This was something that even Wang Zhen found bizarre, just that he had never mentioned it to anyone before. Chong'er, the first prince is His Majesty's eldest son. If His Majesty didn't like him, he wouldn't have allowed him to participate in the royal court. Besides, just because His Majesty hasn't conferred him a title now, doesn't mean that His Majesty won't do so in the future. Wang Zhen argued. Rome wasn't built in a single day. His relationship with the first prince wasn't forged in a single day, but over a long period of time. It was impossible for Wang Chong to change Wang Zhen's impression of the first prince with just a few words, and convince him that His Majesty wouldn't confer a title to the first prince in the future. Furthermore, His Majesty is a wise and benevolent ruler, a monarch whose contributions have been unparalleled throughout the ages. Do you think that he would allow such a tragedy to occur in his hands? Wang Zhen said. His words revealed the source of his confidence in the first prince's ascension to the throne. The current Holy Emperor was acknowledged by everyone in the royal court as a monarch. Under his hands, the Tang dynasty was able to escape the previous dynasty's decline and fall into chaos, thus reaching an unprecedented height. Regardless of whether it was in terms of territory or wealth, the Tang dynasty had far surpassed any other dynasty or ruler. With just 600,000 to 700,000 elite soldiers, the Tang dynasty was able to suppress all the surrounding powers. Regardless of whether it was the Uzun Empire, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo, or Mengshi Zhao, all of them had to admit that the Tang dynasty's strength was undeniably the greatest, far surpassing theirs. Even the unruly Uzun Empire understood that the reason they were able to maintain a stalemate with the Tang dynasty for so many years was due to the unique geography and altitude of the Uzun Plateau. The Tang dynasty was unable to adapt to the environment of the plateau, so they were unable to occupy the Uzun Plateau. This was the true reason why the Uzun Empire was fearless. After decades of development, the surrounding powers were no longer the same as before. However, they still held a deep respect for the Tang dynasty at the center. And all of this came from the current Holy Emperor. Regardless of whether it was in terms of governance, martial arts, or courage, the current Holy Emperor had reached the limits of all previous emperors. Without a doubt, the current Tang dynasty was the most powerful era in history. If not for the respect shown by the previous emperors in the history of the Central Plains, the current Holy Emperor would have long been crowned with the title of Greatest Emperor of all ages. There were many times when Wang Zhen was glad that he was born in such an era and met such a wise emperor. To those who harbored vengeance, this was a rare opportunity that only appeared once in 1,000 years. There was no way Wang Zhen would believe that such a tragedy would occur in the hands of such an emperor. Looking at the serious and confident expression on his big uncle's face, Wang Chong's heart felt heavy. Even now, his big uncle was still unaware that he was walking on a path of no return. His Majesty was indeed wise, but this had nothing to do with what his big uncle wanted him to do. Perhaps his big uncle still didn't know that in the hands of the Holy Emperor, not only would such a tragedy occur, there would also be many things that his big uncle would never be able to imagine. There were simply too many doubts in this matter. Even as someone who had experienced it personally, there were many things that Wang Chong couldn't understand, needless to say his big uncle. However, there was one thing that Wang Chong was certain of. What his big uncle was doing was slowly dragging the Wang clan into the deepest abyss of all clans, the deepest abyss of darkness. If he couldn't stop his big uncle, no matter how glorious the Wang clan seemed to be at the moment, it would only be a fleeting moment in the future, repeating the same mistakes of his previous life. Since his big uncle was still obstinate, he could only find a way to wake him up. At the very least, he had to make him understand that his way of thinking was extremely wrong. Big uncle, do you really think that because His Majesty is a benevolent emperor, such a tragedy wouldn't occur? Throughout history, no matter how wise the emperor was, he was unable to control such a tragedy. Emperor Wu of Han, Liu Che, unified the western regions and conquered Jiaoxi. For the first time, he pushed the influence of the Central Plains into the western and southern borders. His political and military prowess was praised by the world, but due to the catastrophe of the Shaman Gu, Crown Prince Li was beheaded at the waist, and Emperor Wu's younger sisters, Princess Jui and Princess Yangshi, were sentenced to death with white silk. Tens of thousands of officials were implicated, and countless clans were wiped out as a result. Prime Minister Gongsun he wielded great authority in the royal court back then, and he claimed to have the bloodline of the Yellow Emperor. The Gongsun clan was known as a colossus that had existed since the Warring States period, and it was known as the #1 clan in the Great Han. In terms of authority and standing, even grandfather couldn't compare to them when he was still alive. However, Due to their involvement in the matter with Crown Prince Li, their entire clan was wiped out, and their land was reduced to ashes. From then on, the Gongsun clan disappeared from the history of the Great Han. If even a clan with 1,000 years of history like this is the case, what do you think will happen to our Wang clan? Wang Chong sternly said. In the struggle for power, it had always been a bloody, callous, and cruel struggle. Even the princes and princesses were just pawns on this chessboard, let alone the influential clans. Although the Wang clan had a special status in the Tang dynasty, due to grandfather, they were still far from reaching the status of the #1 clan. They couldn't be compared to those clans that had hundreds and thousands of years of history. Big Uncle only knew that it wasn't easy for such a disaster to happen in the hands of the Holy Emperor. But he didn't know that in the hands of a wise monarch, once a taboo was violated, it was easier for one to be implicated. During the reign of the first emperor, Crown Prince Fu Su was the eldest son. The historical record said that he was benevolent, insightful, and farsighted, making him an extremely suitable candidate for the crown prince position. Throughout his life, he had never committed any major mistakes, and his moral conduct was the model of a benevolent person. However, when the first emperor of the Qin dynasty died, Crown Prince Fu Su was killed, and the Ming clan, which was known as the #1 clan in the Warring States period, was implicated and completely wiped out. Yao abdicated to Shun, Shun abdicated to Yu, and Yu abdicated to Bo Yi. This was the ancient abdication system. In the end, Bo Yi was killed by Yu's son, Qi, and Yu's ministers Zhao and Meng died at the same time. Big Uncle, which one of these people wasn't a wise monarch and overlord of the Central Plains? Emperor Wu of Han, Emperor Qin, and Yu the Great? Crown Prince Fu Su, Crown Prince Fu Su and Bo Yi. Which one of them wasn't a person of good character? A person who could ascend to the throne? Gongsun He, Gongsun Jing Ming Tian Meng Yi Zhao Meng Meng. Which one of these people wasn't a wise and insightful person who was praised by the people? Which era didn't have an overlord that was hard to come across in the world? But who would have thought that even when wise emperors like Emperor Wu of Han, Emperor Qin, and Yu the Great were still alive, the crown prince would be deposed? Nephew isn't saying that there will definitely be a problem, but if it happened when Emperor Wu of Han, Emperor Qin, and Yu the Great were alive, does Big Uncle dare to say that this dynasty definitely won't have a problem? Wang Chong said in a low voice. He was already being quite tactful with his words. He couldn't reveal too much about the future, and this was already the limit. Chapter 318. In the room. Ever since Wang Chong brought up Emperor Wu of Han and the Gongsun clan, Wang Zhen had fallen silent. The Gongsun clan of Emperor Wu of Han and the Ming clan of the first emperor of Qin were things that all civil officials had to learn from the moment they decided to enter politics. Wang Chong had spoken very tactfully. At their peak, the Gongsun clan and the Ming clan were not existences that the Wang clan could compare to. As for Gongsun He, Meng Tian Meng Yi, and the others, even though Wang Zhen considered himself an important official of the royal court, possessing the right to participate in politics, and having a clear understanding of the structure of the royal court, he was still lacking compared to these truly renowned generals. Chonga, what do you want to say? After a long moment of silence, Wang Zhen finally spoke, his tone much heavier than before. Compared to a moment ago, Wang Zhen's attitude had clearly undergone a massive transformation. The Wang clan was a powerful clan, but it could not compare to the Gongsun clan of Emperor Wu of Han, much less the Ming clan of the first emperor of Qin. Wang Chong's words clearly had some effect on Wang Zhen's mind. Although Wang Zhen still found it hard to believe that the Holy Emperor would depose the first prince, his tone was no longer as certain as before. The first prince is the legitimate heir, and it is tradition for all the officials to support the eldest son of the first wife. Compared to the other princes, the first prince is clearly more legitimate, and his chances of ascending the throne are greater. Chong'er, do you want our Wang clan to change its attitude toward the first prince because of this possibility? Wang Zhen sternly said. It wasn't easy for him to say these words. One must know that Wang Zhen had summoned Wang Chong over to have him swear loyalty to the first prince. I'm not saying that we won't support the first prince. Wang Chong seriously said. Big uncle, do you still remember the Weijin Nanyang incident? Wang. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Wang Zhen's body visibly trembled, and he arched his back slightly. It was clear that Wang Chong's words had moved him. In the Wang clan, Wang Yan and his son walked the path of generals, while Wang Zhen walked the path of civil officials. Quoting scriptures was a matter for the civil officials. Naturally, Wang Zhen knew what Wang Chong was talking about. It was precisely because he knew that Wang Zhen completely understood Wang Chong's plan. Are you trying to say that you want to imitate Zhuge of Nanyang? Wang Zhen looked at Wang Chong said. Yes. Wang Chong nodded seriously. The history of this world was the same as the one he was familiar with. It also had the story of the three kingdoms, Wei and Jin. However, the span of time was not as long, nor was it as intense and glorious. Nor did it leave behind such a glorious chapter in this world. However, the Zhuge family was divided into three, and the three branches were loyal to three different forces. Thus, the Zhuge family was able to survive in the chaotic world. This was a strategy that allowed the aristocratic families to survive and protect themselves. I understand, Wang Zhen let out a long sigh. But Chong, do you really understand what the Zhuge clan of Nanyang is doing? Yes. Wang Chong nodded. We are still far from the point where we need to do such a thing. I just feel that we shouldn't rush this matter. Perhaps in the future, our Wang clan might even side with the first prince. However, I feel that we are still far from the point where we need to choose sides. Wang Chong spoke these words seriously, enunciating every single one of them. Chong, I already understand your intentions. Wang Zhen let out a long sigh. He had completely failed in his attempt to persuade the other party. Even though he was disappointed, Wang Chong's words weren't without reason. The two of them were thinking for the sake of the clan. Wang Zhen wanted to recruit Wang Chong so that he could pledge loyalty to the first prince together with him. It was the same for Wang Chong's rejection. Even though the paths they chose were different, their goals were the same. From this aspect, Wang Zhen actually felt happy for Wang Chong. At the very least, Wang Chong had learned to think for the sake of the clan. You have already grown up. Big uncle is happy for you. Wang Zhen's heart was filled with complicated emotions. We'll do as you say then. I already know how to reply to the first prince. In the Wang clan, he was already in his 50s, and Wang Chong's father wasn't young either. The second generation of the Wang clan had already reached the peak. After that, it would be Wang Chong, Wang Li Wang Bei, and Wang Fu's turn. It was about time for the third generation of the Wang clan to grow up. Regardless of whether Wang Chong's decision was right or wrong, or if it was proven that he had missed out on an important opportunity in the future, Wang Zhen was willing to support Wang Chong's decision. This was the price that the next generation of the Wang clan had to pay and grow up through. When Wang Chong came, he was filled with ambition. He wanted to convince Big Uncle. But when he left, his heart was filled with respect for Big Uncle. It was easy to imagine the first prince's attitude when he rejected Big Uncle. At the very least, for a long period of time, Big Uncle would be treated coldly, and the first prince would have a rift with him. Big Uncle clearly knew this, but he still chose to support him. This was what moved Wang Chong. Big Uncle, one day, you'll know that this decision is the right one. Boarding the carriage, Wang Chong quickly left Big Uncle's residence and headed for Kungwa training camp. There, Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor was on the verge of exploding. On the second day, the number of students who appeared in the vicinity of deflecting blade manor to join Wang Chong was even greater than on the first day. After the previous preparations, Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor had become the most eye-catching existence in Longwei, Xinwei, and Kungwa training camps. It was finally time for the results. A sliver of consciousness floated in the darkness, extending into the boundless depths and breadth. In this place there was no time, no space, no temperature, only endless nothingness. This was an unknown space, a world of laws. Found it. After an unknown period of time, a voice suddenly echoed in the darkness. Like a bolt of lightning flashing across the sky, the entire space suddenly flared up. And at the end of that sliver of consciousness, a sporadic light suddenly appeared. Within that light, A tiny shadow that harnessed boundless power could be faintly seen. At a glance, that shadow was like a miniature page of a book. It was a tiny fragment of the power of laws. But in the world of martial arts, it had another name, the Book of Laws. When one's consciousness perceived these books of laws, and fused them with one's consciousness, this was known as comprehension. Wang. Like a hook, Wang Chong's consciousness instantly hooked onto the Book of Laws, and swiftly retracted it back into his head. The darkness receded, and light reappeared. Wang Chong finally opened his eyes. What appeared in front of him was an exquisitely polished red sandalwood floor, engraved with patterns of flowers and birds, a simple but elegant table, and a pot of hot red clay tea that was still emitting steam. I've improved a little more. Wang Chong exhaled deeply, feeling much more relaxed than before. After returning from Big Uncle's place, Wang Chong had cast aside the outside world. The royal court and the princes were all tossed to the back of his mind. Wang Chong's entire life revolved around the deflecting blade manor and the training camp. Wang Chong had placed all of his attention on raising his cultivation. Advancing from Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle to True Martial 1 Dan was a huge step. This step didn't have a high requirement on one's origin energy, but it was extremely demanding on one's comprehension of the power of laws, reaching an astonishing level. When Wang Chong first started cultivating the Ripple Halo, he could still perceive and absorb a huge amount of the Book of Laws. But as time went by, the number of books of laws he could absorb gradually decreased. Today, Wang Chong had only managed to capture 24 fragments of the power of laws. Compared to the hundreds and thousands of fragments at the start, this was a pitifully small number. But even so, Wang Chong had never given up. In the initial stages, the more one comprehended the power of laws, the more power of laws one could absorb, and the higher one's achievements would be in the future. This was a small trick in martial arts cultivation. It was often overlooked by many, but it had a huge effect. Thus, even though he had already met the requirements to reach true martial realm, even though he could only absorb 20 fragments of the power of laws each day, Wang Chong had never given up on accumulating knowledge in this aspect. Accumulating knowledge to unleash it. This was what Wang Chong was currently doing. After several months of accumulation, Wang Chong felt that it was about time. Perhaps it's time to ask Instructor Zhao for that item. Wang Chong thought. In order to advance from Origin Energy Tier 9 to True Martial 1 Dan, other than possessing a certain level of comprehension of the laws, one also needed to compress the power of laws into one's body. And in this training camp, other than the 100 great generals, there was also the War Halo technique that Wang Chong desired the most. It was in the hands of Instructor Zhao Qianqiu, Wang Chong's immediate superior. This War Halo technique had been completely forgotten in Wang Chong's previous life. Not a single person in the training camp, including Su Han's Han, had managed to learn it. And for some reason, Zhao Qianqiu had never imparted it to anyone. Wang Chong had no idea what kind of secret or reason lay behind it. But what he knew was that among the war-type halos that could be used on an entire army, the one stored in this training camp was definitely one of the strongest. Every time he thought about how Zhao Qianqiu had never imparted it to anyone, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. But Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry. Getting up from the floor, Wang Chong walked to the red sandalwood table, picked up the red clay teapot, and brewed a cup of tea for himself. Slowly sipping on it, he savored the fragrance in his mouth with a look of satisfaction on his face. Life wasn't just about strength and cultivation. According to the saying of the other world, there should also be poetry and distance. Savoring life and living in the present. This was what Wang Chong had come to after his reincarnation. The future was important, but cherishing the present was even more important. Hung Long. Chapter 319. The deflecting blade manor was bustling with activity. Initially, it only had Wang Chong, Zhao Jingdian and a few others, but now, it had grown to nearly 100 people. There were people playing around, and there were all sorts of people. Initially, Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor was only meant to recruit candidates from Kunwa training camp. However, Due to the addition of the Longwei and Shunwei battalions, Wang Chong's original plan had exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. Thus, the deflecting blade manner was temporarily lacking. Gongzi. Outside the gate, a square-headed, big-eared youth with an ordinary appearance, but an extremely determined expression saw Wang Chong. He respectfully bowed and said, "Wang Chong, I'll be waiting for you. The candidates for today's examination have already been arranged. All that's left is for Gongzi to test them." His voice was neither servile nor overbearing, but extremely respectful. He wasn't Zhao Jingdian, who stood by Wang Chong's side, but Wei Anfang, whom Wang Chong had poached from Longwei training camp. Wang Chong's judgment was spot on. Wei Anfang was currently at his lowest, and the most ostracized. More importantly, Wei Anfang had offended the eldest son of his clan in Longwei training camp. Thus, when Wang Chong's invitation arrived, Wei Anfang was overjoyed and agreed without any hesitation. With this invitation from Wang Chong, Wei Anfang was able to easily shake off the pressure from his clan and elder brother. The Wei clan had just been worrying about how to establish a relationship with the Wang clan, and Wang Chong's invitation came at the right time. And Wei Anfang's capability didn't disappoint Wang Chong. Although the abilities he had displayed weren't too outstanding, he could easily and methodically complete all the missions that Wang Chong had assigned to him on time and on schedule. In terms of capability, he was able to complete all of the tasks assigned to him by Wang Chong perfectly. With Wei Anfang around, Zhao Jingdian was finally freed. The first thing Wang Chong did was arrange for him to cultivate on the spirit vein. In his last life, Zhao Jingdian had not only been his assistant, but also his most capable general. Wang Chong did not want to limit his talent and fighting prowess because of these trifling matters. "And I'll leave it to you." Wang Chong nodded and followed Wei Anfang down the wooden stairs from the second floor. Turning the corner, Zhang Xian saw two tall poles pierced into the ground. One was the flagpole of Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor, and the other was a newly erected one. Two students from the training camp were standing under two wooden poles, surrounded by a large group of people. "Come on, let's see who goes up first." "Bring it on. I'm not afraid of you." 10 taels of gold. "Deal." As soon as the two of them finished speaking, they dashed towards the top of the pole, like monkeys amidst the cheers of the crowd. Wang Chong smiled when he saw the two agile figures. This was the place where he planted his flag, but it had now become a place for them to train and compare their movement techniques. Walking around the corner, he saw many figures fighting in the garden, in the pond, on the fake mountain, and on the walls. They were wielding swords and sabers, but they were all made of wood. This was the daily playful training of the students in the deflecting blade manor. Battles should be fought according to the actual situation. A real battlefield wouldn't just take place on plains, hills, rivers. All sorts of things were possible. This was also one of Wang Chong's ideals. Actual combat. All training was for the sake of actual combat. As such, even though there was a training ground in the deflecting blade manor, it wasn't large. More importantly, it was a practical training ground. "Gongzi! Gongzi! Gongzi!" That upon seeing Wang Chong, the crowd immediately stopped what they were doing and bowed respectfully. "There's no need to stand on ceremony. Let's continue." Wang Chong chuckled and waved his hands. Understanding his intentions, the crowd continued with their work. This was the daily routine of the deflecting blade manor, and they were already used to it. While there were those who diligently trained, there were naturally those who came to play. Hearing Wang Chong's words, many people returned to their seats and continued chatting and sipping tea in the courtyard. Wang Chong's wisteria chairs and sandalwood tables were very popular with many people. At present, there were already more than 10 sandalwood tables and wisteria chairs for drinking tea in the courtyard. These were not prepared by Wang Chong, but by the scions of the other clans. Grapes, pomegranates, sake fruits, dates, pineapples, figs. All sorts of fruits from the western regions, Abbasid Caliphate, and even places further away filled the tables. Most of these fruits had been prepared by Wang Chong, but a portion had been brought by the scions of the other clans. Many of the fruits were even wrapped in the snow of the western regions. And these weren't the only fruits that the scions had brought. Glancing outside, One could see massive axes protruding from the walls. Each of these axes was accompanied by a powerful aura. These were the guards of the Qi clan. The Qi clan had been conservative at the very start, but now its attitude had completely changed. These people had all been assigned to Qi Siwei by the Qi clan. Of course, that was only on the surface. But in reality, these Qi clan guards all obeyed Wang Chong. Wang Chong could order them around as he pleased. This was the Qi clan's way of expressing its support for Wang Chong and the Wang clan. Not only that, there were also many guards from the other clans in the Deflecting Blade Manor. After the matter of the Spirit Vein broke out, countless clans wanted to provide Wang Chong with guards. However, Wang Chong didn't have everything. Only the strongest would be chosen. Even now there were still quite a few clans sending letters to Wang Chong, arguing that Wang Chong should select more guards for their clans. Careful, careful! Just as they were walking, a loud shout suddenly sounded by their ears. The earth rumbled and dust billowed. 5 or 6 black horses brushed past Wang Chong. Wang Chong could almost see the hair and clothes of the riders on the horses fluttering in the wind. Damn it! It's those bastards who train in cavalry again. Can't you guys go somewhere else? Do these bastards think that they can't kill us? Why are they rushing into the crowd? The people in the courtyard were cursing and slapping the dust off their bodies. The Saiyans who were drinking tea were the most infuriated. The dust kicked up by the horses flew all over their cups, and all of them started cursing. But the 5 of them only laughed loudly in front of them. Su Jin, Huang Jianzhang too. What are you guys doing? You almost bumped into Gongzi. Wei Anfang stood at the front, straightening his neck as he looked in the direction of the 5 people. His expression was solemn as he berated them. Ah, Gongzi, I'm sorry. I didn't see him. We're doomed. How did we bump into Gongzi? The laughter from the success of their prank came to an abrupt halt. The group reined in their horses and turned around to look in Wang Chong's direction with awkward and uneasy expressions. It had nothing to do with the pranks of others, but they had almost bumped into Gongzi. In the Deflecting Blade Manor, no matter what Gongzi they used to call themselves, they were now using their original names. In the entire Deflecting Blade Manor, there was only one person who could be called Gongzi, and that was Wang Chong. Go on. Be careful next time. Don't charge into the crowd. Wang Chong waved his sleeves. Yes, Gongzi. Receiving the order, the crowd felt as though they had received a great pardon. They quickly passed through the gates of Deflecting Blade Manor and headed for another mountain, leaving a trail of dust behind them. Wang Chong, I didn't call these girls over to squeeze juice for you. Hurry up and call a few of them over to assist us. Just as Wang Chong was watching them leave, a furious voice suddenly sounded from the side. In a shed not too far away, Marchioness was fuming with rage. As she spoke, she suddenly drew the spear on her back and pointed it at Wang Chong, as though saying that she would teach him a lesson if he didn't agree to her request. Sweat. Seeing Marchioness's attitude, cold sweat trickled down Wang Chong's back. He had called Marchioness over so that she could share his burden. But who could have thought that birds of a feather flock together? The ladies that Marchioness brought in started to help Zhang Xian with the juices, acting as his assistant due to their graceful nature. But after being reprimanded by Marchioness a few times, they were now following Marchioness and practicing their martial arts. Unlike those Saiyans, Wang Chong couldn't order a single one of them around. Anfang, find a few brothers to help Marchioness. Wang Chong turned to Wei Anfang and said, Got it. Wei Anfang's complexion wasn't too good either, and the gorgeously dressed girls around Marchioness burst into laughter. Wei Anfang felt even more uncomfortable. He had always tried his best to avoid this place. As the only Marchioness of the Tang dynasty, even Wang Chong couldn't subdue Marchioness needless to say him. He remembered it all in the past, but for some reason, he had forgotten about it this time. That's more like it. Let's go. Having received a satisfactory answer, Marchioness smiled and waved her hands, letting Wang Chong off. Wang Chong, what about me? When are you going to hand over your intelligence network? Before Wang Chong could take a few steps, a figure suddenly appeared and blocked Wang Chong's path. She looked at him with hostility. Beside her was an old nanny with unfathomable cultivation, who was also staring at Wang Chong like a tiger watching its prey. The only person who could barge into Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor and speak to Wang Chong in such a manner despite not being a member of the deflecting blade manor could only be a member of the royal family, Princess Anai Huang. Ever since Wang Chong was right about Li Yichao, this princess of the royal family had been hanging on to Wang Chong's residence, keeping an eye on Wang Chong at all times. Your Highness, I've already told you. I don't have any intelligence network at all. Everything is from the military. Wang Chong explained with a smile, appearing to be extremely patient. Don't try to fool me. I've already asked. When you told me about Li Yichao losing the Black Mountain, even the Biting Protectorate Manor didn't know about it. Where did you get the intelligence from the military? With a frosty face, Princess Anai Huang exposed Wang Chong mercilessly. She wasn't a naive person. After Li Yichao's matter was verified, she immediately started investigating the situation in the north. In the end, she realized that even the Biting Protectorate Manor didn't know about the loss of the Black Mountain, and yet, a person like Wang Chong, who had been holed up in the capital's training camp, knew about it. Chapter 320. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Princess Anai Huang's judgment was that Wang Chong, or perhaps the Wang clan, definitely possessed an extremely secretive and fast information channel. Princess Anai Huang's thoughts were simple. She wanted Wang Chong to hand over such a secret source of information. To be able to obtain information from the Black Mountain so quickly, this kind of intelligence system was probably even more important than the spirit vein. These were Princess Anai Huang's thoughts. Thus, during this period of time, she did nothing but stay in Wang Chong's deflecting blade manor to keep an eye on him. Anyway, Wang Chong couldn't drive her away. She wouldn't give up until she got her hands on the intelligence system in Wang Chong's hands. Haha, Princess. There's nothing I can do if you don't believe me. In any case, I've already said that I don't have a secret, fast private intelligence channel like you think I do. Wang Chong shrugged with a smile. There was nothing wrong with him in the first place, so it was useless for Princess Anai Huang to force him. Since Princess Anai Huang was willing to stay here, there was nothing he could do. You'll show your foxtail sooner or later. I'll catch you sooner or later. Seeing how stubborn Wang Chong was, Princess Anai Huang threw down those words and stormed back into Marchioness Yi's bamboo shed, glaring at Wang Chong with a frosty gaze. Princess, have some pomegranate juice to calm down. By the side, Marchioness Yi tossed a cup of drink over with a smile, but it was caught by Princess Anai Huang. Thank you, Sister Yin. The reason why he invited Marchioness Yi over was so that she could mediate the relationship between Zhang Xian and Princess Anai Huang. But the two of them ended up chatting with one another instead. This was something that Wang Chong could never have imagined. Walking past the bamboo hut that Marchioness Yi had erected, Zhang Xian arrived at a large hall. This was the most important chess hall in the Deflecting Blade Manor. This was the largest building in the Deflecting Blade Manor. This was something that Wang Chong had attached great importance to from the very beginning. Young Master. Young Master. Inside the chess hall, upon seeing Wang Chong, several guards tensed up and hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. Wang Chong stretched out his hands and gestured for everyone to be quiet. In contrast to the hubbub of voices outside, the vast chess hall was completely silent. The 20 to 30 examinees were deep in thought, and opposite them, the examiners were fighting against each other around the chessboards. As a general, it wasn't enough to just rely on his martial prowess. He also needed to have wisdom and understand the art of war. This was the first-level examination that Wang Chong had arranged. All examinees who wished to join Deflecting Blade Manor had to pass the examination on the first floor before they could enter the chess hall. And the examinees who had already joined the chess hall could also replace Wang Chong in inspecting the next batch of examinees. This was the origin of the instructors opposite them, and it was also the experience that Wang Chong had gained during this period of time. This way, he could save Wang Chong's personal time and energy, and he could also cultivate everyone's feelings for the chess hall. At the same time, He could also strengthen the importance that the students of the training camp placed on the art of war. At the very least, he could make them learn to be flexible in their thinking. Without alarming anyone, Wang Chong walked up a spiral staircase to the second floor of the chess hall. Gongzi, Gongzi, Gongzi. Upon seeing Wang Chong, the dozen or so students bowed respectfully, their gazes brimming with respect and anticipation. It was as if they weren't looking at someone of the same generation. In the training camp, with his extraordinary background and the existence of deflecting blade manner, Wang Chong had long since become an idol in the hearts of the students. But this wasn't the only reason for their nervousness and anticipation. It was also because today was the day that would decide whether they would be able to enter the spirit vein to cultivate. Wang Chong had always divided the chess hall into two sections. The first section was the examination to join the chess hall, which was very easy. Thus, Wang Chong had even allowed the ordinary members of deflecting blade manner to pass the examination. The second section was the examination that Wang Chong himself presided over, and it was aimed at all members of deflecting blade manner. Only by passing the examination would they be able to enter the spirit vein to cultivate. This would greatly increase the importance placed on the art of war and the art of chess, subtly changing everyone's understanding of the art of war and war. Only with this motivation would they truly devote themselves to the study of the art of war. Only a person skilled in the art of war and martial arts was the general that Wang Chong wanted, a future comrade who could fight alongside him. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Sit down. Wang Chong waved his sleeves and gestured to Wei Anfang behind him. The examination will begin now. Everyone sit down. Wei Anfang nodded and stepped forward to address the crowd. The examination officially began, and the crowd sat down with nervous expressions on their faces. More than half of the people who joined Deflecting Blade Manor were here for the spirit vein. Thus, it was easy to imagine how much anticipation they had for this examination. Even though there were more than a dozen examinees, there was only a single examiner. Wang Chong had long ago become familiar with this task. Let's begin. Wang Chong gestured, and the group of examinees solemnly arranged the chessboard and pot before them. Wang Chong walked over and placed his stones one by one, starting from the first piece on the first row to the last piece on the last row. Wang Chong's expression was relaxed and content, and he began playing without any hesitation. As someone who could defeat even war god So Young-sun, it was naturally a piece of cake for him to deal with these students who didn't have much of a foundation. The second floor of the chess hall quickly fell silent, and everyone wore nervous and solemn expressions. The examiners on the first floor were only examinees here. At this moment, the one who was the most relaxed was Wang Chong. After he was done, Wang Chong even had the leisure to look out the window at the bustling construction work behind the Deflecting Blade Manor. Ever since he decided to join Longwei and Xunwei, Wang Chong's Deflecting Blade Manor had been running out of manpower. From that moment on, Wang Chong began to prepare for the expansion of Deflecting Blade Manor. Other than the summit, Wang Chong also planned to build several courtyards halfway up the mountain to increase the space for entertainment and activities. A significant portion of the examinees here were scions of prestigious clans. Their goal here was to have fun. Wang Chong didn't intend to build this place into a training ground, so it was necessary to have some space for entertainment and activities. Halfway through the game, Wang Chong's eyebrows suddenly twitched. This person is a little different. Wang Chong carefully examined the second person in the third row. This was a youth with abnormally fair skin. His eyebrows were extremely delicate, and the contours of his face were extremely soft and beautiful, as if they had been painted by a master painter. His every movement, be it the slight crease of his eyebrows or the slight pursing of his lips, was elegant and refined. He seemed more like a woman than a man. More importantly, Wang Chong realized that he didn't have an Adam's apple. Even though he had been trying his best to conceal it with his head lowered, Wang Chong was still able to see through it with a single glance. A woman? Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. Without an Adam's apple, it was obvious that he was a woman. But more importantly, all of the ladies in Deflecting Blade Manor were gathered around Marchioness E. Why was there a woman here? Furthermore, Even by the standards of a man, the youth before him was extremely beautiful. If he were to revert back to his female attire, he would surely be a peerless beauty. Anfang, who is this person? Wang Chong walked to the side and beckoned for Wei Anfang to ask. Su Chong. Wei Anfang replied without any hesitation. He knew all the people and matters that he had dealt with like the back of his hand. This was also one of the reasons why Wang Chong admired him so much. Which training camp did he come from? Long Wei. Gongzi, what's wrong? Is there a problem? Wei Anfang asked in confusion. He couldn't help but glance at the black-haired youth once more. Nothing at all. Wang Chong waved his hands with a smile. Wei Anfang might be capable, and he had done his job well. But in terms of gender, he was probably lacking compared to Wang Chong. At the very least, Wang Chong could tell that he didn't have an Adam's apple. Su Chong, Su Chong. This fellow is here for me. Wang Chong chuckled. Turning to look at the black-haired youth, he saw the cross-dressing black-haired youth glancing at him indignantly. But it was only a single glance before she lowered her head, revealing a fair and elegant neck. Su Clan, Su Clan. It's Long Wei training camp again, and they're even skilled at chess. Looking at the black-haired youth, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. All of a sudden, a thought flashed across his mind, and a person came to mind. Su Yiqin, the daughter of the capital's Su clan. She was definitely an influential figure in the capital. Furthermore, in Long Wei training camp, this woman was extremely famous. She was definitely on par with his second sister, Wang Zhuyan. More importantly, Wang Chong vaguely recalled that she seemed to be an incredible chess player. If I'm not mistaken, it should be her. Wang Chong smiled. Other than a small portion of the candidates who had entered Deflecting Blade Manor, most of them had been recruited through the chess hall. As such, there were some whose names and backgrounds Wang Chong didn't know. Without a doubt, Su Chong was a fake name. But at the very least, he hadn't changed his surname, so there were still some clues left behind. Is it because you're indignant? That's why you came here to compete with me? Wang Chong chuckled. He vaguely remembered that the person from the Su clan was an extremely proud existence. Most likely, it was because he heard that Zhang Xian was recruiting students for the Deflecting Blade Manor on a large scale, and used chess as the standard for the examination, that he came here to compete with him. And that was indeed the case. When Wang Chong played with her, he could clearly sense that she was far more skilled than the others. It could even be said that they were on a completely different level. Furthermore, when he was playing with her, Wang Chong could clearly feel a strong sense of challenge from her, one that was brimming with hostility. If he wasn't mistaken, she wasn't here for the spirit vein. I vaguely recall that she's quite skilled in logistics, Wang Chong thought. The Tang dynasty was a world of men, and it was extremely difficult for women to stand out. The fact that Su Yiqin was able to make a name for herself among the male students of Long Wei training camp was a testament to her capabilities. But more importantly, Wang Chong still remembered that she was skilled in logistics. Everything had been arranged in an orderly manner. In his previous life, when the Su clan was recruited by King Qi, Su Yiqin naturally joined King Qi. With this woman's assistance, King Qi was like a tiger that had grown wings. In his previous life, she had caused quite a bit of trouble. In terms of logistics, King Qi didn't have to worry at all. If I can poach the Su clan or this woman over, that would be great. Chapter 321. The Su clan was a major clan in the capital. Even though it wasn't a clan of ministers and generals like the Wang clan, it was by no means inferior. If Wang Chong could pull it over to his side, it would be of great help to him. More importantly, the Su clan was still far from being recruited by King Qi. But it was easier said than done. The Su clan was a massive power, and at this stage, it was unlikely that it would submit to any clan. Moreover, Su Yiqin was a proud swan. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used an alias to compete with him in chess. It wouldn't be easy to recruit her. Not to mention, given her reputation in Long Wei training camp, she was probably even stronger than him. If Wang Chong wanted to recruit her, he would have to give her a show of strength. Hee. At this point, Wang Chong already knew what he had to do next. From first to last, Wang Chong's expression remained the same, as if he hadn't noticed anything and continued to play. In truth, Wang Chong's standard was far above that of these people. Seeing Wang Chong devouring their stones in large batches, and a large portion of the chessboard filled with Wang Chong's black stones, the examinees of the deflecting blade manor were already drenched in cold sweat from nervousness. Wang Chong didn't make things too difficult for them. After assessing their skill level and feeling that it was about the right level, he let them pass. Only on Su Yiqin's side, Wang Chong didn't hold back. If Wang Chong had only used 10 to 20% of his strength against the others, then against Su Yiqin, Wang Chong had used 60 to 70% of his strength. It was precisely because of this 70% that Su Yiqin, despite being far stronger than the other examinees, suffered an even more tragic defeat. At the start, Su Yiqin's brows were knitted tighter and tighter. Eventually, she bit down on her lips, cold sweat dripping down her fair forehead. In the end, his face turned pale. In the beginning, Su Yiqin still wanted to struggle and resist, but when Wang Chong increased the intensity of his attacks, Su Yiqin's line of defense was completely routed. He had lost more miserably than anyone else. Pa! Wang Chong placed down the last chess piece. His expression was the same as usual. He didn't say anything, as if he didn't see Su Yiqin's pale face. Now, I will announce the list of finalists. Zhou Yao, Su Yongyuan, Ouyang Chen, Chang Wu Sun Zhongshu. Wang Chong began to announce the names of the finalists one by one. Those whose names were called out all cheered excitedly. However, Su Yiqin or Su Chong's name was not among them. Alright, Wei Anfang, make the arrangements. Give those whose names are called a token, and send them to the spirit vein to cultivate. Yes, young master, Wei Anfang said respectfully. Wang Chong didn't say much. After arranging everything, he flicked his sleeves and walked downstairs. Wait a moment. A voice suddenly called out to Wang Chong. Su Yiqin suddenly stood up from her seat, pointed a finger at the people around her, and said in dissatisfaction, "Why is it that their chess skills are beneath mine, but they are still qualified? Even though my chess skills are higher than theirs, why can't I enter the spirit vein?" Even though she had lost, she wasn't even qualified to enter the spirit vein despite her superior chess skills. This made Su Yiqin extremely displeased. With your standards, you say that you are superior after losing 200 points? You can only bring this matter up when you raise your standards. Su Yiqin's face paled in anger. Wang Chong ignored her. With a cold snort, he flung his sleeves and walked down the stairs. This woman isn't simple. If he didn't remember wrongly, even Yao Feng had suffered under her hands. Since the other party had changed her name to Su Chong, I should pretend that I don't know her. Even though I don't know her. Otherwise, if she were to go on a rampage, her fighting prowess wouldn't be beneath Marchioness Yi's. Bastard. After Wang Chong left, Su Yiqin finally slammed her palm on the table. The rosewood table, known for its toughness, density and toughness, shattered into smithereens under Su Yiqin's palm, shocking the crowd. Su Yiqin knew that Wang Chong was definitely targeting her. The strength he displayed when playing chess with her was completely different from others. He seemed to be merciless towards her. Even now, Su Yiqin still couldn't figure out what went wrong. Could he have seen through her disguise? But even so, he shouldn't have been able to recognize her as Su Yiqin, right? Furthermore, even if her identity was exposed, there was no reason for him to be so hostile towards her, right? It was all directed at her. What are you looking at? Do you think that I can't afford it? Su Yiqin tossed a few gold ingots on the table and stormed off. Walking through the bustling crowd, Su Yiqin didn't alarm anyone. Outside the gates of the deflecting blade manor, a maid who had been by Marchioness Yi's side was waiting with her back bent. "Young mistress, how is it?" The maid was small and dainty, and when she spoke, she lowered her voice so that only Su Yiqin could hear her. "Forget it, let's go." Su Yiqin was still fuming when she was on the second floor of the chess hall. But the moment she stepped out of the gates, she surprisingly calmed down. The Spirit Vein's revelation, and Wang Chong's recruitment of members for the deflecting blade manor near the Kunwa training camp, had attracted the attention of nearly everyone in the capital. For a moment, the Wang clan had become the center of attention, and even the members of the royal family had gotten involved. And as the Wang clan's Qilin son, Wang Chong was known to everyone. Back then, when Su Yiqin heard the news from Longwei training camp, she felt indignant and wanted to teach Wang Chong a lesson. But she didn't expect that she would be completely humiliated this time. But even so, Su Yiqin didn't feel much anger. Her mind was filled with thoughts of how Wang Chong had defeated her. Even though Su Yiqin had a proud personality, she had to admit that Wang Chong's chess skills were exceptionally profound. Even with her skills, she was still no match for him. For some reason, Su Yiqin recalled that rumor. It was said that Wang Chong had played against the legendary war god of the Tang dynasty, So Yung's son, in the Ghost Tree district and even won. This was the reason why she felt so much hostility toward Wang Chong. Su Yiqin didn't believe it initially, but at this moment, Su Yiqin was starting to believe it. Don't get too full of yourself. I'll defeat you sooner or later. This thought flashed through Su Yiqin's mind, and she felt much better. Although Wang Chong's chess skills were better than hers, Su Yiqin didn't think they were much better. She would definitely be able to defeat him the next time she came. At that time, she would tell him who she was. Su Yiqin still felt that Wang Chong couldn't possibly know who she was. Girl, let's go. But miss, don't say any more. We'll come back next time. As she spoke, she walked down the mountain. When she reached a place where there was no one around, she lightly flicked her finger at the top of her head. Kacha! The hairband broke, and her beautiful hair cascaded down her shoulders, back, chest, and hands like a waterfall. Rip! The fingernail of her right index finger drew across her chest, and the male robe on her body immediately split into two, revealing the soft and smooth white dress underneath. At this moment, Su Yiqin didn't have any of her original looks. She had completely transformed into a peerless beauty with fair skin and jade-like skin. Her entire temperament had become incomparably cold. Even if Wang Chong was here, he would probably be stunned by her beauty. Her pitch-black hair made Su Yiqin's skin look like white jade. It was truly pitiful. And the most heart-stirring thing was Su Yiqin's final step. She took out a dark red rouge paper from her bosom and lightly touched it with her red lips. Immediately, her originally cold temperament had an additional trace of heart-stirring red lips. It was like a burning flame, soul-stirring. Su Yiqin put away the rouge paper and called out to someone in the distance. Nay! A carriage that had been hidden in advance immediately rushed out from the forest. Su Yiqin raised her dress slightly and boarded the carriage together with her dainty maid. A cloud of dust rose as the carriage disappeared into the distance. Wang Chong didn't know about Su Yiqin's matter. After leaving the Deflecting Blade Manor, passing through the valley where the training camp was located, Wang Chong headed straight for the main peak. In a grand hall on the main peak, Wang Chong met with his instructor Zhao Qinxiu. Wang Chong, why are you here? Zhao Qinxiu asked in delight. The hall was shrouded in darkness. When Wang Chong walked in, Zhao Qinxiu was seated in front of a bronze table, doing something seriously. At first glance, Wang Chong couldn't get a clear look, but when he took a closer look, he couldn't help but smile. Placed before Zhao Qinxiu was a chessboard, and upon closer inspection, he realized that the game on it was clearly the one he had played with Zhao Qinxiu previously. Brat, what are you laughing at? A snake-like arm abruptly reached over and wrapped around Wang Chong's neck, twisting it so tightly that Wang Chong's neck reddened. No, I wouldn't dare to laugh at you. Wang Chong hurriedly released his arm and admitted defeat. What a joke. Even though his strength had grown significantly, how could he possibly compare to Zhao Qinxiu? He was no different from a mantis trying to stop a cart. Brat! Zhao Qinxiu pushed his arm away before releasing Wang Chong. In the training camp, there was a clear division between instructors and students, but Zhao Qinxiu was different. Only he would do something like that in the middle of the night, when everyone was getting familiar with one another. Similarly, there were only a handful of instructors like Zhao Qinxiu, who were willing to play around with their students without putting on airs. Of course, Zhao Qinxiu didn't treat everyone like that. Ever since he lost to Wang Chong in the chess hall, Zhao Qinqiu didn't dare to teach Wang Chong at all. Correspondingly, Wang Chong was also bound by many restrictions, allowing him to enjoy his freedom. Speak, what's the matter? You don't come here often. Zhao Qinqiu smiled. Instructor, I wish to learn the halo of Dusk Stallion, Wang Chong said. What did you say? Zhao Qinqiu was still smiling initially, but upon hearing those words from Wang Chong, his body jolted. The smile on his face vanished, and he stared at Wang Chong in shock. Halo of Dusk Stallion. I wish to learn the halo of Dusk Stallion. Wang Chong repeated. My cultivation has already reached Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle, and my comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth has reached the same level as well. I still need a true martial realm war halo. No, that's not what I'm asking. How do you know about the halo of Dusk Stallion? Chapter 322. The matter of the halo of Dusk Stallion was a secret in the training camp. Not even the other instructors knew of it, needless to say the students. In the entire training camp, there were probably less than 3 people who knew of the existence of this cultivation technique. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the war halo was a taboo in the training camp. In fact, the higher-ups hadn't even decided whether they would impart it or not. And Zhao Qinqiu had never mentioned it to anyone either. In the training camp, this was a secret. Where in the world did Wang Chong learn of the existence of this cultivation technique? Wang Chong smiled silently. The matter of the halo of Dusk Stallion had always been a secret in the training camp. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for no one to learn it. Of course, Wang Chong wouldn't say that he had learned it through his second reincarnation. Instructor, am I wrong? Is there no such cultivation technique in the training camp? Wang Chong asked. Zhao Qinqiu's brow creased as he seriously looked at Wang Chong. Wang Chong, you said that you wished to learn the halo of Dusk Stallion, but do you know what this halo represents? Of course I do. Wang Chong smiled. The halo of Dusk Stallion was the strongest war halo in the world, as well as the strongest war halo in the entire training camp. It was created for the sake of battle. Unlike other secret techniques, this secret technique had to be complemented by a war steed in order to display its might. More importantly, this secret technique could be evolved. Wait a moment. Without saying a word, Zhao Qinqiu turned around and left. In just a few moments he had already left the hall. Leaving his living quarters, Zhao Qinqiu passed through the main hall, and soon arrived at the most central room of Kunhua training camp. It was dignified and solemn, reminiscent of a bottomless abyss. In this hall, there was only one person who was qualified to sit here. Of the thousands of instructors in the training camp, only a handful of high-ranking instructors were qualified to enter this room. Without any hesitation, Zhao Qinqiu revealed what Wang Chong had told him. Halo of Dusk Stallion? In the hall, the tall and burly figure hidden in the darkness sat up slightly. He supported his chin with one hand and frowned at the same time. The halo of Dusk Stallion was bestowed upon us by His Majesty. Besides you, me, and His Majesty, the number of people who know about this matter can be counted on one hand, definitely not more than 5. Also, the training camp has just opened. How did Wang Chong know about it? Could it be that the Wang clan's one? This subordinate thinks so too. Zhao Qinqiu hurriedly interjected. If it was the elder of the Wang clan who reported it to him, then everything can be explained. The old duke has always had a deep meaning behind his every move, and he is extremely close to His Majesty. Perhaps it was His Majesty's intention to have Wang Chong learn the halo of Dusk Stallion. If Wang Chong were here, he would definitely be shocked. This was because the content of their conversation was completely different from his understanding of what they were talking about. Both of them actually thought that it was Wang Chong's grandfather, Duke Jiu of the Tang dynasty. Since it's the old duke's intention, he should understand that His Majesty doesn't want us to impart this ultimate art lightly, and must choose suitable candidates. It's definitely not because this ultimate art is too powerful and can't be imparted lightly, or because we want to keep it to ourselves. Instead, it's because this is a very important matter and involves a lot of people. Even His Majesty has to tread carefully. Since Duke Jiu knows this well, Why would he still allow his grandson to learn it? The brows of the tall and burly figure in the hall shot up, as though he had just heard a difficult question. I don't know. Perhaps His Majesty and the old Duke have other intentions. Besides, I've asked Wang Chong, and he said that he knows what it means. Zhao Qinxiu revealed the conversation between him and Wang Chong. These words played a decisive role. Perhaps not even Wang Chong could have imagined that his words would be interpreted by Zhao Qinxiu and that person. Since the old Duke doesn't mind, let's do as he wishes. Zhao Qinxiu, follow the rules. That person said. Yes, Lord. I understand what I should do. Zhao Qinxiu nodded before respectfully backing out of the room. Wang Chong waited outside the room for a very long time. Just as he was wondering what Zhao Qinxiu was up to, Zhao Qinxiu finally stepped over the doorsill and walked in. Wang Chong, I can impart the halo of Dusk Stallion to you. However, you have to think it through carefully. The halo of Dusk Stallion is different from other martial halos. Firstly, it needs to be paired with a steed, and you already have this. Secondly, the cultivation of this secret art is much more difficult than any other martial art. Cultivating the halo of Dusk Stallion will cause your martial realm to regress, and it will consume a large amount of origin energy. Those of the same cultivation realm as him might have already reached profound martial realm, but due to the halo of Dusk Stallion, you are still stuck at true martial realm tier 1 or tier 2. Are you willing to accept this? Zhao Qinxiu said grimly. There was a reason why the halo of Dusk Stallion was not taught to others. Cultivating this secret art would place a huge burden on a martial artist, and it wasn't something that just anyone could cultivate. I'm willing. Wang Chong replied without any hesitation. No matter what, he had to learn the halo of Dusk Stallion. Also, even if I impart the halo of Dusk Stallion to you, you might not succeed. You might not even be able to meet your expectations. Even so, do you still want to learn it? Zhao Qinxiu asked. This was the truth. The halo of Dusk Stallion had an extremely high requirement on talent and diligence. Even so, one might not necessarily succeed. The more powerful a secret art was, the harder it was to cultivate. This was a fact. The halo of Dusk Stallion was not a new technique. Before this, there had been other cultivators who had cultivated it. However, those who had managed to cultivate it to the highest level were few and far between. To be more precise, there had not been a single one. Because they had spent a large amount of time on the halo of Dusk Stallion, they had failed to get on the good side of both sides, resulting in their achievements falling far short of expectations. This was a common situation. As Wang Chong's instructor, Zhao Qinxiu had to be responsible for him. These were things that had to be made clear. Wang Chong nodded. Very good. Zhao Qinxiu nodded in satisfaction. Then the rest is simple. The halo of Dusk Stallion is a top-notch secret art in the training camp, so it can't be imparted lightly. Make your preparations. 3 days from now, you should prepare to undergo a trial. As long as you can clear it, I will impart the halo of Dusk Stallion to you. Trial? Wang Chong was surprised. He wasn't too sure about this. Let me tell you this first. Even I can't change the rules of the training camp. Once you accept the rules, you will be under the responsibility of the other instructors, and even I can't do anything about it. This is the rule of the training camp. Also, I know that you have established the deflecting blade manner and recruited quite a few students from the training camp. However, the rule of the training camp is to test your individual ability. Thus, other than yourself, you are not allowed to bring anyone else. This includes the guards of the Wang clan. If anyone were to violate the rules or cheat, their academic records will be revoked, and they will be expelled from the training camp. Zhao Qinxiu said seriously. The consequences of violating the rules were severe, so he had to explain this to Wang Chong. Being expelled from the training camp wasn't a big deal, but having one's academic records revoked meant that one would never be able to enter the military again. Similarly, this stain on one's academic records meant that one would never be able to enter politics or become an official. As a scion of a prestigious clan, this meant that one's entire life would be ruined. Zhao Qinxiu had no choice but to explain this severe consequence to Wang Chong. I understand. Wang Chong nodded. In other words, In order to obtain the halo of Dusk Stallion, one had to display the corresponding ability. Go! After leaving the main peak, Wang Chong settled the matters in the deflecting blade manner and began preparing for the training camp's trial 3 days later. Wang Chong didn't know much about the training camp's trial, only a rough understanding of it. When the students in the training camp reached a certain level, or when their cultivation reached a certain level, the royal court would assign them randomly. However, the assignment wasn't fixed, and most of the time, the chief examiners weren't even from the training camp. On top of that, there was no way to control it. More importantly, these missions were all real, and they were all difficult problems that the royal court couldn't resolve. They weren't intentionally arranged by the training camp. This also meant that there was a certain degree of danger to these missions, even though the royal court would try its best to control the danger. I wonder what kind of mission it will be? Wang Chong thought. This was the first time Wang Chong was participating in such a mission. Time flew, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Neigh! Suddenly, the crisp neigh of a horse reverberated through the air. In the blink of an eye, a black silhouette darted through the forest and landed on the peak. It circled around Wang Chong, and at the same time, it approached Wang Chong and rubbed its head against Wang Chong's body. At the same time, it stuck out its tongue and licked Wang Chong's palm in an extremely intimate manner. Wang Chong's palm was tickled, and he couldn't help but laugh heartily. Haha, little Shadow, long time no see. Stroking Black Shadow's glossy mane, Wang Chong passed over a handful of beans and watched as Black Shadow's lips squirmed as he ate them one by one. Wang Chong couldn't help but feel a sense of intimacy. The white-hoofed shadow had a personality that was extremely fond of freedom and freedom. This was not obvious in the palace, but now that it was out of the capital and in the presence of nature, the white-hoofed shadow's free and unrestrained nature could no longer be controlled. When Wang Chong first realized this, he had long ago released it into the wild. Unlike what he had imagined, not only did this not alienate the relationship between the owner and the white-hoofed shadow, it actually made the white-hoofed shadow feel closer to its owner. This was because the white-hoofed shadow could sense that its owner had given it something that no one else could. Freedom. Little fellow, let's go. It's time for you to be of use. Chapter 323. Hiya. Squeezing the horse's abdomen, Shadowless leaped up like a dragon. With a single step, it crossed layers of space and landed 5 or 6 zhang away, kicking up a cloud of dust. Neigh let out a long neigh as the white-hoofed shadow carried Wang Chong down. After a few months of growth, Shadowless's body was much stronger and stronger than before. Although it was not an adult yet, it was not inferior to other adult horses, and might even be better. Brat catch. At the edge of the training camp, a tall figure stood, seemingly waiting for a long time. Seeing Wang Chong approaching on horseback, he laughed and suddenly threw something over. Wang Chong leaned to one side and caught it. It was a thumb-sized bamboo tube. Brat, open it whenever you encounter a problem you can't solve. It might be of help to you. Ha ha ha, thank you, instructor. Wang Chong waved his hand and put the bamboo tube into his robe. Then he galloped away without stopping and soon disappeared into the forest. Whoosh! The autumn wind blew. On a bare hillside deep in the mountains, several figures exuded an extraordinary aura. Each of them was riding on a tall horse. These people were in their 20s, and there were both men and women. Every movement they made had the extraordinary aura of dragons and phoenixes among men. Under their feet, a halo of thistles and thorns vibrated under the hooves of the horses, spreading out, making them look even more heroic. True martial realm. These people were actually all true martial realm experts. He should be here by now, right? It's been so long. Why hasn't he appeared yet? Who does he think he is to make so many people wait for him? The people of Kunwa training camp have no concept of time at all. On the bare hillside where reddish-brown rocks were exposed, the horses were sneezing. These people looked rather impatient. Neigh. At this moment, Neigh's horse suddenly neighed. At first, it was still in another valley, but in the blink of an eye, it had sped all the way here. Everyone, sorry for the long wait. Warhorses Nei and Wang Chong rode the white-hoofed shadow out of the dense foliage and landed on the reddish-brown rocky hillside. It should be right. This is the place. Wang Chong thought to himself as he glanced at the tall scarlet flame flag behind the three of them. Come with 3 great training camps, had a total of 3 fixed assembly points for the joint training. The gathering point would be different depending on the level. Wang Chong was currently at the highest grade Dragon Tiger Flaming Flag, the gathering point for the 3 great training camps joint trial. It was Wang Chong's first time participating in such an operation. He had been lost in the mountains for a while. Fortunately, he had set off in advance, so it should be about time. These fellows have very high cultivation bases. Shifting his gaze away from the scarlet flame flag, Wang Chong soon noticed the 3 people in front of the flagpole, as well as the true martial realm halos beneath them. Wang Chong had no idea that the people accompanying him were all true martial realm experts. What's going on? Why are you only here now? Aren't you being a little too arrogant to have a group of people wait for you? Are all the people in Kunwa training camp like this? As expected of those with humble backgrounds. That just as Wang Chong was about to greet them and introduce himself, a piercing voice sounded by his ear. The 3 of them were assessing Wang Chong with unfriendly gazes. Wang Chong chuckled and retracted his outstretched hand. Clearly, the 3 of them had taken him as a descendant of those officials in Kunwa training camp. Indeed, compared to those from Longwei and Shenwei, those from Kunwa training camp had the worst backgrounds. Chen Burang, for example, was the son of an ordinary hunter. In this aspect, they weren't on the same level. I'm sorry I'm late. Wang Chong smiled. He wasn't angry at all. It was obvious that none of the 3 recognized him. What's going on? Why did Kunwa training camp send such a young lad? The young man in the middle, who seemed to be the scion of a prestigious clan, assessed Wang Chong from head to toe. Suddenly, he seemed to have noticed something and cursed. At this moment, the others also noticed that Wang Chong's appearance was at most 15 to 16 years old. He didn't seem to be older than 17, which was a far cry from them. Those who were able to appear here were around 19 to 20 years old. Most of them were at the same level as Wang Zhuyan and Martianus E. They were well-known figures in their respective training camps. Standing together with them, Wang Chong did seem out of place. Not only so, the young man on the right with the square face and thick brows also noticed something else. What's going on? He doesn't even have the halo of a true martial realm cultivator? Isn't he trying to drag us down? Not only was Wang Chong younger than them, his cultivation realm was also much lower than theirs. Furthermore, the war steed beneath him didn't even have the halo of a true martial realm cultivator. Not to mention, that steed was just a young one. Such a companion was truly a prodigy. He wasn't on the same level as them at all. This made the crowd even more displeased. Shenwei and Longwei weren't on the same level as Kunwu in the first place. This was the difference between nobles and commoners. On the other hand, Wang Chong's behavior only served to deepen the gap between them. This misunderstanding is getting bigger and bigger. Wang Chong chuckled. From the attire of the trio, Wang Chong could roughly tell that they were from prestigious clans. Indeed, they were rather prominent in the capital. However, in terms of background, none of them could match up to him. However, Wang Chong couldn't be bothered to explain. This wasn't his style at all. Don't worry, I won't drag you down. If you encounter any danger, feel free to leave me behind. Wang Chong smiled. He wasn't angry at all. It's best if you don't. The young man in the middle harumphed. With a flick of his reins, Nei and his steed flew down the slope, heading north. 1, 2, 3. Finally, Wang Chong also urged the white-hoofed shadow to leap down the slope. The young woman, who was at the very back, saw Wang Chong's skillful maneuvers, and a hint of astonishment flashed across her eyes. However, she quickly turned around and without saying a word flew away. The trees on both sides flew past them as fast as lightning. In such a complicated terrain, the warhorse's capabilities were displayed. The thistles, shrubs, and jagged rocks were all too easy for warhorses to get injured. The trio had originally believed that Wang Chong wouldn't be able to keep up, but they quickly realized that Wang Chong was completely capable of keeping up with them. He's got some skill." The trio coldly snorted and quickly ignored Wang Chong as they headed north. "This isn't going into the capital at all." Wang Chong quickly noticed something strange as he followed behind them. Although he couldn't see it from the forest, if he looked carefully, he could see that the group was traveling in a massive arc, circling around the capital. This meant that they wouldn't be entering the capital at all. "I wonder what this mission is about." Wang Chong suddenly felt a tinge of curiosity. About 2 hours later, the group finally passed through the forest and stepped onto the official road. They traveled more than 20 kilometers to the north. In the northwest of the capital, a figure dressed in official robes stood by the side of the official road with his hands behind his back and a gloomy expression. Behind him were several imperial guards of the palace. Someone from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wang Chong's eyebrows twitched. Of all the officials in the royal court, the ones he hated to see the most were the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. It wasn't because he had any grudges with the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, but the vast majority of the people in the capital didn't like the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. This was because the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies were extremely protective of the foreigners, be it the Abbasid Caliphate, Spazinu, the countries of the western regions, Uzan or Goguryeo. As long as there was a conflict with the foreigners, the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies would definitely appear. The phrase that the officials of the Chamberlain of Dependencies said the most was "Our great China is a land of etiquette. We must be magnanimous." Thus, whenever there was a conflict, it was the people of the Central Plains who were on the losing end. In the capital, even the scions of the prestigious clans didn't like the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. But the Chamberlain of Dependencies just had to shoulder the responsibility of diplomacy, and it wielded immense authority. Every year, the royal court would be arranged by the Chamberlain of Dependencies. On top of that, the Holy Emperor rarely interfered in this matter, allowing the Chamberlain of Dependencies to grow stronger and stronger. Even the scions of the prestigious clans would rarely provoke the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Otherwise, if the Chamberlain of Dependencies were to lodge a complaint with the Holy Emperor, and the censors were to impeach them, it would be a huge headache for their clans in the royal court. The Chamberlain of Dependencies is only responsible for matters related to the foreign countries. In other words, this mission has something to do with the western regions. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he vaguely guessed at a few things. The biting protectorate in the north was currently in a tense relationship with the eastern and western khaganates. The appearance of the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies definitely didn't have anything to do with the Turks, so the rest was easy to guess. Of all the foreign countries, the Chamberlain of Dependencies was most concerned about the relationship between the countries of the western regions and the Abbasid Caliphate, Spazinu, and Sindhu. Firstly, it was because this road was far from the Central Plains to the Turkic steppe, and it was fraught with danger. Secondly, it was because this road was too unstable, filled with too many uncertainties. The Silk Road, the name of this road flashed through Wang Chong's mind. In the Tang dynasty, it still didn't have such a name. However, Wang Chong already had a rough idea of what this mission was related to. Since Wang Chong had come from the commoners' Kunwa training camp, this matter naturally had nothing to do with him. The youth from Longwei training camp quickly stepped forward and handed over the task to the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. The official from the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies nodded and turned to face the crowd. "All of you will head west to the first gathering point. Everything has been arranged. Let me warn all of you in advance. Once you participate in the operation, even if you die midway, you are not allowed to back out. You must completely obey orders, or else you will be severely punished." Chapter 324. "Yes, my lord." The three of them lowered their heads and answered respectfully. It was clear that they had already experienced the might of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Only Wang Chong held his head high unmoved. What did you not hear?" The official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies stared at Wang Chong, his expression suddenly turning cold. He extended a finger like an iron pincer and pointed fiercely at Wang Chong said, his expression very displeased. "What are you doing? Did you not hear what Milord said? Don't cause trouble, hurry up and apologize to Milord." That the expressions of the three changed slightly, and they all turned to look at Wang Chong, their faces full of accusation. The people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies were feared by everyone. Getting involved with them was troublesome. The three of them were not young children. They already knew how powerful they were, so they did not dare to offend them. "Haha, rest assured, Milord. We will definitely do things according to the rules." Seated on the back of the horse, Wang Chong laughed heartily. Although the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies were arrogant and bad-tempered, to the point that even the seniors of Longwei and Xinwei training camp were afraid of them, he was not that quick. Wang. Just as the official's expression changed and was about to explode, Wang Chong lowered his sleeves and calmly and lightly brushed it, revealing a golden token at his waist. In just an instant, the token was once more hidden beneath Wang Chong's robes. Even the three closest to him did not notice it, but the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, facing Wang Chong, saw it clearly. In that instant, his entire body felt like it had been pricked by a needle. The curses that had been about to burst out of his mouth were swallowed back. He looked at Wang Chong again, and his eyes immediately revealed a look of extreme fear. Only now did he realize that the most inconspicuous youth in the group, the one with the lowest status, was actually the one with the highest status here. Although the Chamberlain of Dependencies had great power, it could not control the royal family. "Milord, I'm sorry. It was our people who were disrespectful. I'll teach this kid a lesson on your behalf." The youth from Longwei training camp suddenly turned his horse around and glared fiercely at Wang Chong. He was already dissatisfied when they gathered at the first training camp. Now that Wang Chong had offended someone from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, he really could not hold back his anger. He did not want to offend the people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies because of Wang Chong, making this mission even more difficult. "Enough. Don't waste any more time. Hurry up and be on your way." Just as the young leader was about to reprimand Wang Chong, the official from the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies waved his hand and chased him away. He didn't want to offend a certain prince of the Tang dynasty because of this matter. It was better for him to leave as soon as possible. "Humph. Count yourself lucky." The young man in the lead glared fiercely at Wang Chong before spurring his horse west, heading towards the first gathering point mentioned by the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Flap, flap, flap. Wang Chong would never have imagined that not long after they left, a white pigeon would flutter down from the sky. The official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies extended an arm, allowing the pigeon to land on it. Only then did he untie a letter from his leg. Seeing the contents of the letter, the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies had a look of understanding in his eyes. Then, he took out a pen and quickly wrote a line on the back of the letter. "Target has passed." He tied the letter back to the pigeon and sent it off with both hands. The pigeon fluttered into the sky, heading in the direction of the capital. Wang Chong would never have imagined that what awaited him at the first gathering point was not some Yamen official, but 4 squads of Tang dynasty cavalry. These cavalrymen were all clad in old armor, many of which were already worn and mottled, almost falling off. However, their postures were still ramrod straight as they sat on their horses like javelins. Their gazes were as sharp and resolute as ever, filled with a fearless spirit. These were 4 squads of seasoned veterans. "Lord." Upon seeing the 4 men galloping over, an officer who seemed to have been waiting for a long time hurriedly urged his steed forward to welcome them. At this moment, the transcendent status of the 3 great training camps was on display. The students of the 3 great training camps would eventually become generals in the military. In the words of the other world, they would be considered to have graduated from a specialized school. In terms of standing, they were even higher than the officers of the regular army. "Lord, Officer Zhang Lin will lead the soldiers here to take over the military order. Prepare to heed the orders of the lords at any moment. We will not hesitate to carry out the orders of the lords. May I know when we shall set off?" As he spoke, the lieutenant named Zhang San placed his right hand on his chest and performed a standard military salute. His expression was very respectful. "What did you say?" These soldiers are here for us to command? Judging from the lieutenant's words, the upright, meticulous veterans, who looked like they were cast from iron and silver, were all there for them to carry out their tasks. Su-gan, the young leader of Longwei training camp, had participated in many missions, but this was the first time he had encountered such a mission. He couldn't help but feel agitated. Yes, Lord. According to the orders of the military, the 4 lords will each lead 20 soldiers for this mission. You are free to command them as you please. Don't worry, sirs, they are the most qualified warriors. No matter what mission it is, even if it's a dead end, they will still strictly follow orders and rush forward without a frown. They are the most qualified soldiers. Zhang San added one last sentence with an extremely solemn expression. The 4 of them were incomparably agitated. Among the students of the training camp, be it Longwei, Xinwei, or Kunwu, which one of them didn't dream of leading an army on the battlefield? But all of that would have to wait until they graduated from the training camp. Who could have thought that they would be able to experience it in advance in this mission? Even though each of them would only lead 20 soldiers, this was already a considerable number. In the military, this was equivalent to having 2 10-man squad leaders under each of them. Great. The 3 of them were delighted, and even Wang Chong was tempted by the offer. I didn't think that I would be able to get so many soldiers for this mission. Wang Chong couldn't help but feel agitated. However, these soldiers held an even greater significance to him. As a former marshal of the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong felt an innate sense of closeness toward these soldiers. Leading soldiers to war, to Wang Chong, felt as if he had traveled back in time, and his blood seemed to be on the verge of boiling. This was a call from the depths of his soul. Ever since his reincarnation, this was one of the few times that Wang Chong was given a chance to lead a troop to war. The last time was when they were dealing with the Gogrian assassins. However, that mission was extremely short, lasting only a single night. Furthermore, Wang Chong was only a supporting figure. However, it was different this time. It seemed like he was in charge of this mission. Furthermore, the duration of the mission seemed to be far longer than a single day. During the mission, he would be able to command these soldiers to his heart's content, allowing him to experience the same feeling he had in his previous life. Jaya. While Su Gan and Zhang Lin were exchanging their roles, Wang Chong suddenly leaped onto his steed, and before the astonished gazes of the trio, he actually dashed toward the group of soldiers ahead of them. That darned bastard. How dare he make the first move? He's really looking down on us. Later on, when the mission is over, the 3 of us will leave him behind. Let's see how he accomplishes the mission. That the trio flew into a rage. Hearing the furious voices of the trio, Wang Chong chuckled lightly, paying them no heed. Seeing these veterans on the battlefield, something deep within Wang Chong's bloodline awakened. It was as if some kind of summoning had awakened, and it would have been a miracle if he had been able to hold himself back. Slowing down his footsteps, the hooves of the white crow moved in a unique rhythm toward the 80 soldiers, or rather cavalrymen. This was a unique movement technique to show respect to the other party. In the military, only veterans with more than 10 years of service would know how to use this technique. These were all veterans on the battlefield. Just the worn armor on their bodies was enough to prove their worth. Only those who had dedicated their lives to the front lines of the empire were qualified to earn his respect. Upon seeing Wang Chong's movements, the faces of the 80 cavalrymen warped in astonishment. Initially, they thought that the mission was just to serve a bunch of young masters from the training camps. But who would have thought that they would meet such a figure? With just a casual movement, Wang Chong had won the respect of these soldiers. Which of you are willing to follow me for this mission? Wang Chong urged his steed forward. His voice was resounding, and his eyes were sharp. Even before 80 seasoned veterans, he didn't show the slightest hint of stage fright. We are willing to follow Lord Wang Chong's orders. After a short period of silence, a group of 20 cavalrymen stepped forward in an orderly manner, their eyes shining brightly. They were in high spirits, and stood out from the formation. Very well, follow me. Wang Chong gestured grandly, before galloping to the other side of the hill. Behind him, The 20 experienced cavalrymen followed closely behind him. There wasn't the slightest hint of disorder in their formation, as if they were a single person. Wang Chong glanced at them and nodded. In terms of military accomplishment, the soldiers of the Tang dynasty were undoubtedly the best among the surrounding countries. This also boosted his confidence in this mission. Where did that lad go? Looking at Wang Chong's departing back, Su Gan frowned. Is there even a need to ask? Look at how smug he is. He must have dragged those cavalrymen over to have some fun. People who are born as commoners have never seen the world. On the other side, Huang Yongtu tightened the reins on his steed with a look of disdain. Although everyone was very excited to have obtained 20 soldiers that they could use as they pleased, they were, after all, from great families and had seen the world. They were not as complacent and unrestrained as that brat. Kungwa training camp is Kungwa training camp. Commoners are commoners. Huang Yongtu's disdain deepened. Forget it. The mission is more important. Let's hurry up and select our soldiers. Chapter 325. Siling's words make sense. Let's hurry up and select our troops. By Siling's words quickly drew everyone's attention away from Wang Chong. Their gazes quickly shifted from the group to the 60 imposing cavalrymen. This was the first time he was leading an army into battle. And on top of that, it was a real battlefield. At this moment, even Su Gan couldn't help but feel excited. The group of cavalrymen galloped forward and began selecting their troops. After crossing a small hill, on the other side of the hill, Wang Chong arranged the 20 cavalrymen into formation and began his training. In the military, when a commander took in soldiers, especially those who didn't belong to him, the first thing he had to do was to drill them and familiarize them with their unique traits. Then, according to the characteristics of these soldiers, they were assigned different tasks according to their abilities. This was a common practice in the military. A true commander would have to know every single soldier, sergeant, and 10-man squad leader like the back of his hand. This way, he would be able to bring out the full might of his troops during a mission. This was what Wang Chong was doing at the moment. And this action won him the respect of the 20 cavalrymen. Who among you is a sergeant and a 10-man squad leader? Wang Chong stood at the very front of the group and asked with a loud voice. A slight commotion broke out in the group, and soon 3 cavalrymen stepped forward. Reporting in, I am a 10-man squad leader. Reporting in, I am a 10-man squad leader. Reporting in, I am a 10-man squad leader. That the 3 of them raised their arms and announced their identities in the military. There's only one 5-man squad leader? Wang Chong frowned. Logically speaking, there should be 4 5-man squad leaders and 2 10-man squad leaders in a group of 20, but something was amiss. Reporting in, we weren't originally from the same squad. It's just that we were transferred out of the other squads in the past few days. One of the 10-man squad leaders said. This surprised Wang Chong. Judging from their appearance, Wang Chong thought that they were from the same squad. Which squad did you all belong to? All of you. Report your original army. Wang Chong said. What happened next surprised Wang Chong even more. The team of 20 people actually came from more than 10 different teams, 5 different legions of various sizes. Some were from the Biting Protectorate, some from the Anong Protectorate, some from Anxi, and some from the prefectural armies in the rear. In short, this was an army that the imperial court had temporarily transferred from various troops to form. This discovery greatly surprised Wang Chong. Is the training standard of the current army still so high? Wang Chong was astonished. In his memory, when he first came into contact with the regular army in his previous life, their training was terrible. However, from the looks of it now, even though the imperial court was still filled with arrogance and hadn't been able to open their eyes in time to see the rise of the various powerful forces around them, the military training system of the imperial court that had been passed down for hundreds of years was still perfectly maintained. At the very least, before the Great Calamity, the military still maintained a very high standard of conduct. This could be seen from the army before him. Wang Chong couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, He had been reincarnated rather early. If he used it well, he still had time. Next, split into 4 groups of 5 people. Begin the formal training, Wang Chong ordered. An army of 20 people wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small number either. Wang Chong's plan was to divide them into 4 square formations of 5 people. Each square formation would be arranged according to the abilities they displayed, and everyone would have their own tasks. In this way, they would be able to use their arms and fingers, and in battle, they would be able to bring out the limits of their abilities to the greatest extent. Gallop. The warhorses charged, kicking up a cloud of dust. The army of 20 divided into 4 groups and began their daily training. At this time, everyone's unique traits were on full display. Some people were very fast, and when they charged, they were clearly much faster than the others. These people could serve as bait for the enemy, and they could also turn around and help defeat the enemy at any time. At the same time, they could be used as scouts to investigate the enemy's situation at any time. Wang Chong organized them into the first echelon. And some people were very strong. They were very talented and skillful in borrowing the strength of their warhorses. With the same strength, they could use the warhorses to charge, and the strength they displayed was much higher than the others. These people could take on the task of attacking the enemy, and they could also serve as backup support to deal with unexpected situations at any time. Wang Chong organized them into the second echelon. There were also people who were more balanced in strength and speed. Whether it was attacking the enemy or baiting them, they could take on the role. These people were the backbone of the mission. Once the first and second echelon were damaged, they could be transferred from there as a backup plan. Wang Chong organized them into the third echelon, and the rest of the people were the fourth echelon. These people were the weakest, but they weren't too far off. Basically, they were enough to carry out the mission. Wang Chong personally led this group of people by his side. You two, where are you going? You and you go over there. Wang Chong watched carefully. After a few drills, he reorganized the 4 echelons according to the characteristics of these people. Then he picked out 3 more sergeants from these echelon squads. Just like that, a team of 20 people, 2 sergeants, 4 sergeants, and 2 echelons were all reorganized. The 20 people were still the same 20 people, but in Wang Chong's eyes, the atmosphere had completely changed. This was a team that could truly fight. In other words, they could cooperate with him on the battlefield at any time. Now, there's only one last step left, Wang Chong thought to himself. War was the best way to improve an army. Throughout the ages, the most elite and valiant troops had always been trained from fierce battlefields, from blood and fire, from swords and sabers. In the future, although calamities were everywhere, the strength of the army would increase to an unprecedented level. And in the future, there would also be new changes in the way the army was commanded, and Wang Chong was the new initiator of that change. Relying on the knowledge from another world, Wang Chong invented a set of flag semaphore that could make an army more united, compact, and more powerful. At the same time, it was more efficient. What Wang Chong was going to teach them now was the simplified version of the flag semaphore. It was very suitable for this kind of small team of 20 people. For echelons with different responsibilities, plus this concise and comprehensive set of flag semaphore, the combination of the two was enough to make this team of 20 people shed their mortal body and change their bones. They would be able to display a combat strength far stronger than before. After passing the simple flag semaphore to the 2 sergeants and the 4 sergeants, the way they looked at Wang Chong was completely different from before. In the beginning, they only felt that Wang Chong was completely different from the other young masters and young mistresses of the training camp. He seemed to be very proficient in military matters, but after teaching the flag semaphore, the way they looked at Wang Chong was completely different. They even felt that this young man was like a deep abyss, unfathomable and unfathomable. Sir, may I ask for your name? A sergeant suddenly stepped forward, his eyes filled with respect. Even a fool could tell what Wang Chong's flag semaphore meant. Opportunities on the battlefield were fleeting. The same order, as long as the timing was slightly off, could result in a completely different outcome. The way the army commanded was slowly accumulated through the generations. It was not something that could be easily changed. The flag semaphore that Wang Chong taught was concise and effective. It was not something an ordinary person could easily do. My name is Wang Chong. My father is Wang Yin. Wang Chong smiled calmly. He knew what everyone was thinking, so he revealed his name without hiding it. So it's young Master Wang. The crowd was in an uproar. The sergeant who stepped forward to question Wang Chong widened his eyes. Crude people like them did not understand the politics of the capital. However, the regional commander's incident that happened a few months ago was something that even they, the ordinary uncouth people, knew about. Not to mention, the Wang clan was a military family. Be it Duke Jiao, who was revered by the people of the Tang dynasty, or General Wang Yan, they were true generals. They were naturally close to the military. It's fine as long as everyone knows. Don't tell anyone else. Wang Chong faintly smiled. He could clearly sense the change in the gazes of the crowd. The Wang clan still had a high reputation in the military. Understood. Don't worry, sir. We know what to do. The gazes that the crowd directed toward Wang Chong were filled with respect. Since this lord was from a military clan, it was no wonder that he would be able to invent such a set of flag semaphore. Naturally, the crowd attributed the flag semaphore that Wang Chong had just invented to the credit of the Wang clan. Right, are they still unaware of Lord Wang Chong's identity? The 10-man squad leader said as he turned his gaze to Su Gan and the others on the other side of the hill. They could clearly see that the relationship between Wang Chong and the others wasn't too good. It's just a small misunderstanding. Let them be. Wang Chong shook his head, not bothering to explain the matter. I understand. The gazes of the group, from sergeants to corporals, looked at Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others unfriendly. The Wang clan was a clan of generals and ministers, and it was a part of the military. Furthermore, given the Wang clan's reputation, they weren't one to bully others. Thus, it was likely that the others were at fault. Everyone, practice a little more and familiarize yourselves with it. After that, we'll head over. Wang Chong instructed. Yes, Lord. Receiving the order, the crowd began practicing once more. It had to be said that these veterans of the Tang dynasty were indeed skilled. In just a short period of time, they had already grasped Wang Chong's flag semaphore. As for their strength, seeing the corporeal halos beneath their feet as they charged forward, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh in awe. Chapter 326. Regardless of whether they were the 10-man squad leaders or the ordinary soldiers, every single one of them possessed a cultivation higher than him, reaching true martial realm. 20 veterans of the Tang dynasty were all true martial realm experts. This was the difference between regular soldiers and ordinary soldiers. Other than those who were currently undergoing training, most of those who could join the regular army of the Tang dynasty were at true martial realm. On the other hand, these veterans had served in the military for 10 years, or even longer, and they were the elites of the elites. As such, there was no need for him to worry about their fighting prowess. What kind of nonsense is this? Does he think that he's fighting a war? 20 men isn't a lot in the first place. And to think that they would be so scattered. Leave it to him. That fellow doesn't seem to know anything at all. There's no way he'll be able to complete this mission. Let's just leave him at the rear later on so that he doesn't drag us down. It seems like those 20 men have followed the wrong person. What a waste. While Wang Chong was training, the trio had also finished reorganizing their troops. At the same time, they began paying close attention to the situation on Wang Chong's side. As they were separated by a small hill, the trio could only see the troops above their shoulders. Wang Chong's 4 echelons were mixed together, and in the eyes of the others, it was a complete mess. There was no order to speak of at all, and they couldn't help but look down on them. On top of that, Wang Chong was from the Kunwa training camp, which was a place where commoners gathered. Thus, the trio couldn't be bothered with Wang Chong anymore. Get ready, we'll be setting off soon. If he doesn't come over by then, there's no need for us to wait for him. We'll just have to leave by ourselves then. As Su Gan spoke, he turned his steed around and headed back to his cavalry unit. Even though it was only 20 men, this was the first time Su Gan was leading an army into battle. He couldn't help but feel an urge to give it a try. On the other hand, Wang Chong didn't allow Su Gan to have his way. After practicing a few more times, and practicing a few offensive formations, Wang Chong finally ended the drill. Leading the group of 20 cavalrymen, who had undergone a complete transformation on the outside, they began making their way toward Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. "Are you satisfied?" Huang Yongtu raised his eyelids and looked at Wang Chong with a mocking smile. "Yes." Wang Chong gave a magnanimous smile, not bothering to bicker with him. With a wave of his right hand, the 20 soldiers immediately returned to their original formation, standing next to the other lines of cavalry. "Humph." When the three of them saw this, they snorted and turned their heads away. Wang Chong smirked and didn't mind. He stood alone at the front of the line. Walala. In the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, a hawk commonly seen in the army with golden hooks and sharp claws fell from the sky like a sharp arrow. Zhang Lin, the captain of this operation, hurriedly rode forward and raised his hands to catch the massive eagle. Then, he deftly removed a bamboo tube from the eagle and opened it. After taking a look at its contents, he quickly galloped over and passed it with both hands. "The royal court has ordered us to set off immediately for the mission. This is the map of the operation and the requirements." The mission was divided into different parts, and each person was responsible for a different mission. The officials of the Chamberlain of Dependencies were responsible for selecting the gathering point from the 100 or so gathering points, while low-ranking captains like Zhang Lin were responsible for commanding the troops and gathering them together. The details of the mission were issued by the Bureau of Military Personnel, but even the Bureau of Military Personnel had no idea who would be carrying out the mission. Everyone was responsible for their own tasks, and this ensured that the mission was carried out safely. Everyone played their part, and at the same time, this ensured that the mission would be carried out without any malfeasance. The first part of the mission is to clear out the bandits and highwaymen along the way. Don't let a single one of them escape. Once more than 6 of your subordinates die, you will have to withdraw from the mission immediately, and the mission will be considered a failure. Looking at the contents of the news, a deep frown slowly formed on Su Gan's forehead. He passed the letter over to Huang Yongtu, who passed it over to Bai Siling, and finally to Wang Chong. The Silk Road was an extremely long and narrow road. It would take several months for one to reach the western regions, and most of the places along the way were uninhabited. They were either deserts, mountains, or barren plains. On such a long journey, it was simply too convenient for one to spy on others, rob them, and so on. And it just so happened that the Hu people and Hu merchants on the Silk Road were all extremely wealthy, and the things they bought and sold were not ordinary. Pearls, agate, precious stones, spices, gold, and even charming Persian dancers. All of these were simply too attractive. Just by robbing a few of them, one would be able to strike it rich. As such, the Silk Road to the west was filled with bandits and highwaymen. Even though the imperial army had been cracking down on them, they were still unable to stop them. Even though they knew that the consequences would be dire, there were still quite a number of bandits and highwaymen who were willing to take them down. Most of the Hu merchants from the Abbasid Caliphate and Karax Spazinu were either wealthy or noble, and they had many experts by their side. It wasn't an easy task to take them down, but even so, it didn't stop the passion of the bandits. These bandits and highwaymen were really like chives. Every year, a wave of them would be harvested, and another wave would be harvested. It would have been one thing if that was all. The situation on the Silk Road was extremely complicated. At the start, there were only a few Han bandits and highwaymen, but as time went by, the situation gradually changed. Some of the Hu, Arabs and Karax Spazinu, who were skilled in martial arts, also realized the immense profits to be made from the Silk Road, and after being robbed once, they decided to join the bandits as well. On top of that, there were many times when the Hu, Arabs, and Han would mingle together, and the bandits would be filled with all sorts of people. The Hu and Arabs would provide intelligence, and the Han and Hu would move together to rob others. As time went by, the bandits on the Silk Road grew larger and larger, and the targets of their robberies also changed. At the start, the bandits on the Silk Road still targeted the Hu merchants, Hu and Arabs. But as time went on, they started robbing everyone who passed through their territory. As long as there was a profit to be made, the Hu and Han would work together to rob the bandits. Later on, when the situation reached its most outrageous point, there was a time when a bandit or highwayman actually plundered the troops of the imperial court. Because of that incident, the imperial court was enraged, and they began to pay more attention to the matter. Thus, they began to carry out regular sweeps. The situation was extremely complicated, and Wang Chong had heard a little about it back then. He had met some merchants who had been robbed, and they had all complained about the bandits and highwaymen, so he was extremely familiar with the situation. It seemed like he was participating in one of the regular sweeps conducted by the imperial court. It's no wonder the Chamberlain of Dependencies would be dispatched, as well as 80 veteran soldiers. Wang Chong recalled the officials from the Chamberlain of Dependencies in the northwest corner of the capital, and he fell into deep thought. In Wang Chong's memories, the Silk Road was a passageway for Hu merchants, and it was under the jurisdiction of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. As for the regular sweeps of the bandits and highwaymen of the Silk Road, the Chamberlain of Dependencies had always been in the charge of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wiping out the bandits and highwaymen of the Silk Road wasn't a difficult task. No matter how strong the bandits and highwaymen were, they couldn't possibly be stronger than the regular army, not to mention 80 veteran soldiers. However, the requirements mentioned that no fish could escape the net during the operation. During the course of the mission, each subordinate could not die more than 6 people. This was the real problem. Those who were able to travel along the Silk Road were no ordinary people. Most of them had interacted with the imperial army and had their own philosophy of survival and techniques. Some of the bandits were even equipped with military crossbows, and some of them numbered in the hundreds or even close to 1,000. In this kind of encirclement, it was very difficult to guarantee that there would be no casualties. These two conditions meant that this operation was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Commandant Zhang, it's understandable if the imperial court doesn't want to act. But wouldn't it be a little difficult to prevent a single bandit or horse bandit from escaping? The mountain range was so deep and wide, so it was normal for 1 or 2 of them to escape. Isn't this request a little too high? Su Gan said with an awful complexion. Hehe, my lord, this matter is actually very easy to understand. Zhang San explained with a smile. These bandits and highwaymen are no different from weeds. As long as 1 or 2 of them manage to escape, they will be able to build another stronghold in the future. This is how most of the bandits and highwaymen on the road to the west came about. If we want to intimidate these bandits and highwaymen, we have to eliminate all of them. Only then can we instill fear into the hearts of those who come after us. Otherwise, this operation will be meaningless. It will only lead to more and more bandits and highwaymen. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Bai Siling glanced at one another. The complexity of the Silk Road had far exceeded their expectations. Only Wang Chong wasn't too surprised, having expected this. However, there's no need to worry. Most of the bandits and highwaymen on the road are just disbanded troops, and their fighting prowess is negligible. Before the Imperial Army, they won't pose a threat to us. So there's no need for you to worry too much. All you have to do is to find them and prevent them from escaping. Zhang San added with a smile. Hearing this explanation, Su Gan and the others heaved a sigh of relief. That gave me a fright. So that's the case. That's simple, we just have to wait until late at night before making our move. Even though the bandits and highwaymen are scattered throughout the day, they will surely return to their hideout at night. Furthermore, the night is also the time when the bandits and highwaymen are exhausted. If we make our move at that time, we will surely be able to catch them off guard. Furthermore, we can also prevent them from escaping. Chapter 327. Lord Su Gan is wise. This method is indeed feasible. Zhang Lin bowed respectfully. He had no objections to Su Gan's opinion. Even though the members of Longwei training camp had zero experience on the battlefield, they weren't newbies. Clearly this method was feasible as well. Sugan nodded proudly. Then he suddenly caught sight of Wang Chong and sneered coldly. There's no need for you to follow us. You can wait at the back lest you drag us down. Sure. On the back of the steed, Wang Chong nodded nonchalantly. His nonchalant attitude left Sugan gnashing his teeth in hatred. If he could, he would have given the other party a good beating. But in the end he held himself back. As long as Wang Chong didn't make any mistakes, he couldn't find fault with him for no good reason. The consequences of such a mistake in the midst of the training would be severe. You'd better do so. Sugan glared at Wang Chong hatefully before beckoning the others. Let's go. Under Zhang Xian's command, Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and Bai Siling led 20 cavalrymen each, and for a total of 60 cavalrymen, they set off for the west. Lord Su, why didn't you resist? The road to the west is not as simple as he thinks. If it were that easy, we would have wiped them out a long time ago. Why would we need to do this now? Galloping sounds sounded behind them, and a 10-man squad leader from Wang Chong suddenly rode up to them. Looking in the direction that Sugan and the others had left in, he glared at them indignantly. Wang Chong came from a military clan, and it was one of the most respected of them all. Weren't these people being too brazen before Wang Chong? It's fine. Let them do as they please. Wang Chong waved his hands. Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and the others thought that they were useless at the moment. So if they were to reveal their identity now, it would only weaken the reputation of the Wang clan, and make others think that the Wang clan only knew how to bully others. Once they suffered and hit a wall, they would naturally understand. It wouldn't be too late for them to reveal themselves after revealing their capabilities. Right, have you participated in such a mission before? Wang Chong suddenly turned around and asked. Yes. Ma Song nodded and did not deny it. Most of our brothers were transferred from other places. I've only participated a few times in the past. Oh. Wang Chong was a little surprised. Even Commandant Zhang couldn't see through it. However, Ma Song seemed to be more knowledgeable. Then do you know what's going on? Wang Chong asked. Ma Song shook his head then nodded. I don't know what happened before. I only know what happened in the past few months. On the road leading to the Anqi Protectorate Manor, the Imperial Army would regularly encircle and suppress the bandits and brigands. However, they were usually separated by a long time. However, things have been very different recently. About a month ago, many bandits and horse bandits suddenly appeared on this road. Furthermore, they were extremely active, and it seemed very different. Ma Song said. Oh. Wang Chong's eyebrows twitched, and he seemed to be deep in thought. On the road to the west, it should be normal for bandits and horse bandits to appear at certain times, right? I'm not too sure either. However, around half a month ago, we caught a group of bandits and captured their leader. Based on what they said, someone seemed to have invited them to form a clique and gather in the forest. The remuneration they offered was extremely generous. That person was masked, and he seemed to be highly skilled in martial arts. We weren't able to discern his background. However, according to that person is extremely short. He doesn't seem like the Hu of the western regions, nor does he seem like a Han. Instead, he exudes the scent of horse milk, reminiscent of the scent of the people from Uzan in the west. Uzan is still quite a distance away from this road. Furthermore, they rarely leave the highlands, so they aren't familiar with the central plains. It's unlikely that they would come here. Wang Chong said. Wang Chong had some understanding of the Uzan. In truth, the Uzan were slightly shorter than the Han. However, due to their worship of heaven's burial, the Uzan had a ferocious nature. Their greatest trait was the scimitars they carried on their bodies, and when paired with the charge of their steeds, it was extremely effective. In a battle against the Uzan, when they charged down from the highlands like a tidal wave, it was extremely difficult to stop them. Even the sturdiest of fortresses might not be able to stop the charge of the Uzan. However, the Uzan had an innate attachment to their highlands, and they viewed the environment of the highlands as superior to any other environment. In the eyes of the Han, the environment of the highlands was extremely harsh. Most of the time, The Uzun would return to the highlands after conquering the cities and conquering the lands. Thus, in the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, there were Hu Abbasid Caliphate, Sindhi, Goguryeo, and the 6 Zhao of Arai. However, there were very few Uzun. This was also one of the reasons why Wang Chong felt that it was unlikely for the Uzun to appear here. I don't know either. However, those were indeed the words of the chief of the fort back then. Later on, the people from the Bureau of Military Personnel appeared and took him away. I don't know what happened after that. Ma Song said, there were many soldiers on the western expedition to suppress the bandits, and Ma Song was just an insignificant soldier among them. It was already commendable for him to know so much. After all, it wasn't often that he went on missions. I understand. Wang Chong nodded. He didn't say anything else, but his mind began to work. The Uzun. A month ago, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He vaguely recalled hearing that an envoy from the Uzun had arrived at the Tang dynasty. However, envoys were common in all countries, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It's a pity that there aren't any carrier pigeons here. Otherwise, I could look into it and see if this matter is really related to the Uzun. Wang Chong sighed. Other than followers, messenger pigeons were not allowed to be brought into the mission. In other words, all of those who participated in the mission were currently uncontactable. Even the instructors in the training camps weren't aware of the situation. Needless to say, the others. Jaya. Wang Chong urged his steed forward, and the group swiftly followed behind. By nightfall, they were already 200 li away from the capital, and they were already within the borders of the Tang dynasty. Beneath a massive pine tree, Su Gan led a group of 20 men, ready to set off. They had only discovered a small group of bandits this time around, and they didn't seem to be too strong. Su Gan was itching to make a move, and he was prepared to make a move. Even though he was from a prestigious clan, this was the first time Su Gan was involved in a real battle, not to mention that he was leading a group of 20 elites under his command. Thus, Su Gan decided to make a move personally. Don't move around recklessly, just stay here. I'll deal with them myself. Especially you. I don't want you to foil my plans. Su Gan turned around and pointed a finger at Wang Chong, who was standing on the dark road a dozen zhang away. Brother Su, I'll be staying here today. I won't be going anywhere. Wang Chong replied with a smile. His temper was unbelievably good. Su Gan's punch landed on empty air, and he felt extremely displeased. He had tried his best to infuriate Wang Chong, but the latter didn't fall for it at all. Like a mouse trying to pull a tortoise, Su Gan had no idea where to start. But the more Wang Chong behaved this way, the more displeased Su Gan felt. Wait for my good news. Su Gan turned around and led the 20 cavalrymen into the forest. Like a slithering snake, they made their way toward the bandit den. Su Gan's cavalrymen were agile, and they moved in a uniform formation, completely unaffected by the trees and thorns. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but commend them upon seeing this. It would take at most an hour to travel from the main road to the bandit den. Given Su Gan's capability, they would be able to slaughter their way back and forth a few times. Seeing that they had disappeared, Wang Chong closed his eyes and remained motionless. Hua! In just an instant's time, a blazing flame suddenly burst forth from a mountain in the distance, and screams of agony echoed. Soldiers, run for your lives! The screams of agony and fear were exceptionally loud in the dark of the night. Even from afar, everyone could hear them clearly. Amidst the blazing flames, the neighing of war horses could be heard, and one could vaguely see the silhouettes of imperial soldiers leaping into the air, as well as bandits fleeing in all directions. Su Gan has failed. Looking at the distant mountain peak, Huang Yongtu and Bai Siling's complexion turned awful. Even if they hadn't seen it yet, it was clear that Su Gan's plan had failed. Those bandits might be weaker than the soldiers, but once they decided to escape, their martial arts wouldn't be of much use at all. What was worse was that according to Lieutenant Zhang Lin, even though the bandits and highwaymen had their own territories, they were extremely well coordinated when it came to matters concerning the soldiers. If one or two bandits were to escape, News of the group's success would swiftly reach the other bandits and highwaymen. This was also the reason why they couldn't allow a single bandit to escape. But from the looks of it now, their operation wouldn't be as smooth as before. In the shadow of the trees, Wang Chong watched the blazing flames and the screams on the mountain peak with a nonchalant smile. You knew that he would fail? A voice suddenly sounded by Wang Chong's ear, making him leap in fright. Turning around, Wang Chong saw a beautiful and fair face. In the darkness, Bai Xiling stared at Wang Chong with a bizarre expression. Wang Chong was truly shocked. He had heard the voice earlier, but he thought that it was one of his subordinates. He didn't expect it to be Bai Xiling. Along the way, the three of them had looked down on him, not interacting with him at all. As for this Bai Xiling, this was the first time Wang Chong was interacting with her. Senior, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you are saying at all. Wang Chong shook his head with a smile, feigning ignorance. Is that so? Chapter 328. But soon, Bai Xiling turned around and walked to the other side. On the other side, Huang Yongtu had already noticed the commotion. What were you talking about with that lad? Huang Yongtu frowned. Nothing much. Brushing past Huang Yongtu, Bai Xiling returned to her group without any hesitation. Displeased, Huang Yongtu harumphed coldly and quickly diverted his attention. On the other hand, Wang Chong was shocked by Bai Xiling's actions. This woman is a little too formidable. Did she see through something? Or is it just a woman's intuition? Looking at the motionless Bai Xiling in the distance, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. Bai Xiling's actions had truly caught everyone off guard. Wang Chong had to admit that he didn't expect Bai Xiling to be paying attention to him all this while. But even so, Wang Chong didn't think that he had any flaws that she could see through. In Wang Chong's view, Bai Xiling's actions seemed to be the fearsome intuition of a woman. The women in the training camp who are able to reach true martial realm are indeed extraordinary. Wang Chong thought. Second sister Wang Zhuyan, Marchioness Yi, Princess Enai Huang, and now Bai Xiling were the same as well. This left Wang Chong feeling deeply apprehensive. Furthermore, Bai Xiling's final words left Wang Chong with an indescribable feeling. Bai Xiling said that she had met him somewhere before. But Wang Chong knew that it was impossible for him to have met her before. I have underestimated her, Wang Chong thought. At the peak of the mountain, the fire was still blazing. It should have been a swift mission. But Su Gan took an entire hour to arrive. By the time they came down from the mountain, they were all covered in soot, and Su Gan's face was as dark as the bottom of a wok. My lord. Zhang San spurred his horse forward with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. However, Su Gan quickly turned his head away. Don't ask. You failed. Two of them escaped. As he said those words, Su Gan's complexion was extremely awful. This time, he was full of confidence and had considered all the problems very well. But when they really arrived at the top of the mountain, everything was completely different from what they had expected. Su Gan spent more than an hour hunting down the bandits who had escaped, hoping to make up for his mistake. However, the darkness of the night, the complicated terrain, and the darkness of the night instead became his greatest obstacles. Even though he had given it his all, the two bandits still managed to escape. Even Su Gan himself sustained some injuries. It wasn't from the bandits, but from his hasty pursuit, that his steed lost its footing and got caught in the thorny vines. Su Gan wanted to lie and say that he had killed all of them. But other than him, there were still 20 veterans of the Tang dynasty. It was impossible for him to do such a thing even if he wanted to. My lord, there's no need to worry about it. There are still many bandits and highwaymen on the road to the west, and this is only the first one. There will be many more opportunities in the future, so just be careful, Zhang San consoled. In the first place, the royal court didn't expect the recruits to succeed in this operation. They were just making use of this opportunity to temper them. Zhang San had already thought this through, so he wasn't too disappointed. Since it was still early, the group made use of the darkness of the night to rush toward the second bandit den. Su Gan had been suppressing his anger for a long time now. This time, without waiting for orders, He led the 20 cavalrymen up the mountain like ferocious tigers unleashed from their lashes. Having learned his lesson from the last time, Su Gan was exceptionally cautious. He had also made ample preparations beforehand. But an hour later, Su Gan appeared before them with an even uglier complexion than before. Even though he had been extremely careful, a few bandits still managed to escape. It wasn't that Su Gan hadn't participated in other missions before, but the bandits on the road to the west were exceptionally cunning. They were more familiar with the terrain here, and they were more adept at making use of it. At the same time, they were also more experienced in dealing with government troops. It was as if he was holding a loach in his hand, unable to catch it no matter how hard he tried. Damn it! Su Gan's face turned livid. He had finally realized that the mission wasn't as simple as he had thought. Brother Su, why don't you let me give it a try? Huang Yongtu stepped forward with his steed between his legs and offered. There's no need for that. I don't believe that a disciple of Longwei training camp like me, the heir of the Su clan, won't be able to deal with a bunch of weak bandits. Not only did Su Gan not give up after 2 consecutive failures, he was even more determined to wash away the humiliation he had suffered. Making use of the darkness of the night, the group headed west. When they arrived at the 3rd bandit den, Su Gan immediately charged up the mountain. The commotion this time around was clearly much better than the previous 2. There were no blazing flames, or the neighing of horses. But when a small bandit slid down the cliff and disappeared into the valley, Su Gan felt like his lungs were going to explode. Without a doubt, this meant that he had failed yet again. The escape of any bandit meant that their whereabouts had been compromised. After 3 consecutive failures, something unexpected was bound to happen. Su Gan's mission was a complete failure. Brother Su, it's inevitable for you to fail the first time. Why don't you rest for a while and leave the rest to me? Huang Yongtu patted Su Gan's shoulder and said nonchalantly. Su Gan was from Longwei training camp, and his cultivation was even higher than his. Initially, Huang Yongtu had thought highly of Su Gan for this mission. However, the 3 consecutive failures had left Huang Yongtu's eyes wide open. He began to look down on Su Gan a little more and a little less. Furthermore, it was written all over his face. Sensing this change, Su Gan harumphed coldly before riding his steed to the side. Even though he was indignant, after failing so many times, even Su Gan was at a loss for words. Taking advantage of the fact that there was still some time before daybreak, the army marched for 20 li and arrived at the 4th bandit's territory. Needless to say, Huang Yongtu was in high spirits as he led the 20-odd cavalrymen forward like tigers and wolves. Roughly an hour later, Huang Yongtu finally returned with his men. Unlike Su Gan, there were injured soldiers in Huang Yongtu's group as well. Just by looking at his expression, everyone could tell that Huang Yongtu had failed as well. He had failed to wipe out all of the bandits. What are you looking at? Is it strange to fall into a trap? There's something interesting to see here. Huang Yongtu angrily retreated to the side with his men. Huang Yongtu didn't expect the bandits to be so cunning. The path leading to the den seemed to be safe, but it was actually riddled with traps. In a moment of carelessness, Huang Yongtu and his steed had fallen into a trap. Since the trap had already been triggered, the bandits in the den had already been alerted. It was easy to imagine what would happen next. Huang Yongtu might be strong, but his fist was stuck in the air, unable to exert any strength at all. And I thought that you were a capable man. Naturally, Su Gan wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. Only at this moment did everyone realize that the simple order from the Bureau of Military Personnel was completely different from what they had imagined. It wasn't difficult to defeat those bandits, but it was impossible to annihilate all of them without letting a single one escape. The 4th and 5th bandit groups were located relatively close to each other. The one to carry out the mission this time was by Xiling, but they still failed. 5 missions from the 3 of them ended in failure. Even Lieutenant Zhang Lin was unable to offer any words of consolation at this point. These few recruits from Shunwei and Longwei training camps seemed to be completely inexperienced. At this rate, there was no way they would be able to succeed in the mission. There was no need for them to carry on with the mission. Furthermore, even though they had wiped out a few groups of bandits, It wouldn't be long before new groups of bandits rose up and reclaimed the hills. There was no lack of such adventurers on the road to the west. 5 missions in a single night. By this time, the sun had already risen, and it was no longer suitable for them to carry out any missions. All right, let's rest for a while. Don't give up, we'll continue tomorrow night. Before Zhang Lin could finish his words, he was interrupted by a sharp rebuke. Brat, what are you laughing at? Are you mocking us? Su Gan suddenly glared at Wang Chong and bellowed furiously. Am I? Wang Chong pointed a finger at himself with a perplexed look on his face. He had been sitting on the back of the horse all this while, and he didn't seem to have done anything at all. When did Su Gan see him mocking them? Still trying to deny it. The more Su Gan thought about it, the angrier he got. 3 missions in a single night, and all of them ended in failure. This left Su Gan fuming. At this moment he felt that everyone was mocking him. No matter whose gaze it was, even if it were to brush past him, Su Gan would find it extremely jarring. As for whether Wang Chong was laughing at him or not, it didn't matter anymore. Do you think that we are useless? Do you think that you are more formidable than us? Do you think that I can't see through your thoughts? If you are that formidable, why don't you go? Let us see what you are capable of. Su Gan said coldly. Am I? Wang Chong pointed at himself with an innocent look on his face. He didn't seem to have such thoughts, nor did he say such words. However, from the looks of it, Su Gan seemed to have confirmed his thoughts. What arrogance! Huang Yongtu harumphed coldly by the side. Initially, he thought that Su Gan was a weakling, but when it came to the operation, he realized that the situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. At this moment, Huang Yongtu felt a stinging sensation on his face. It wouldn't have mattered much if all of them had failed, but of the 4 of them, 3 had failed. Only Wang Chong had yet to give it a try. At this moment, Huang Yongtu was naturally standing on Su Gan's side. Lad, since you are so formidable, why don't you try it yourself? Then why don't you do it yourself and show us? Huang Yongtu mocked from the side. A glint flashed across Bai Siling's eyes. She wanted to say something, but she eventually held it in. Only Lieutenant Zhang Lin was a little worried. Sirs, it's important for us to maintain amicable relations. We still need to work together in the future. Besides, the sun is already up, and it's no longer suitable for us to make a move. Zhang Lin urged his steed to stand in the middle of the group, hoping to alleviate the tense atmosphere. But at this moment, something unexpected happened. All right, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.